SB recommendation that developed vetting clearance should be denied to Peter Mandelson. I find that astonishing. As I said out Odyssey, I do not accept that I could not have been told about the recommendation before Peter Mandelson took up his post. I absolutely do not accept that the then Cabinet Secretary, an official, not a politician, when carrying out his review, could not have been told that UK SB recommended that Peter Mandelson should be denied developed vetting clearance. It was a vital part of the process that I had asked him to review. Clearly, he could have been told, and he should have been told. Mr. Speaker, on the same day the then Cabinet Secretary wrote me, so that the 16th of 2025, the Foreign Secretary, a then Permanent Secretary of the Foreign Office at Lobbying, provided a signed statement of Foreign Affairs Secretary. The statement says, and again quote, "Vetting was taken by UK security on behalf of CEO, concluded with DV clearance being granted by FCEO, Advanced Mandelson taking up in February." It went on to say, and I quote, "Peter Mandelson's security vetting was conducted to the usual standards for development vetting in line with established office policy." To see, let's be very clear now. This was questions which included whether concerns were raised, the Foreign Office response was whether they assist. Speaker, the Foreign Secretary was advised on, allowed on statement for officials without being told the UKSC had recommended to Mandelson to make that developing clearance is absolutely unforgivable. It's a senior cabinet giving a comment on the very issue. Mr. Speaker, in lateral relations out in February of this year, I was very concerned about the fact that developing clearance had been granted. Not knowing that, in fact, UKSC had been denial developing clearance, I instructed my officials to carry out a review of national security vetting process. As I said, I do not accept that I have not been told about UKSC's security before Peter Mandelson took his vote in January 5. I do not accept that the Cabinet Secretary could have been told in December 2020 when he carried out his review of the process. I do not accept that the Foreign Secretary could not have been told when making statements to the Select Committee in 2020. But speaking on top of that, the fact that I was not told even I ordered a review of the UK's process is frankly staggering. Can tell us that an update on the review to security to make sure it covers needs which all decide in relation to national security vetting. I appointed a full team review. Secretary of Security Group Cabinet Office took issue to the age of Peter Mandelson. Mr. Speaker, I know many members now find this to be incredible. To that I must say they are right. It bears belief that throughout the whole 9/11 event, officials in the Foreign Office saw fit to withhold this information from most witnesses in artists in England. That is not how the vast majority of people in the country expect politics, government or accountability to work. I do not think it's how most public servants think it should work either. I work with hundreds of civil servants, thousands even, all of whom act with the utmost integrity, dedication and pride to serve this country, including officials from the Foreign Office who, as we speak, are doing a phenomenal job representing our national interests in a dangerous world, in Ukraine, the Middle East, all around the world. This is not about them, but yet it's surely beyond doubt that the recommendation from UKSB that Peter Mandelson should be denied vetting clearance was information that could and should have been shared with me on repeated occasions, and therefore should have been available to this House, ultimately to the British people. I commend the statement to the House.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Prime Minister for our side of the statement. His reputation is at stake. Everyone is watching. It is finally time for the truth. Earlier today, Mr. Speaker, Downing Street admitted that the Prime Minister inadvertently misled the House. The Prime Minister has chosen not to repeat that from the dispatch box. I will remind him that under the Ministerial Code, he has a duty to correct the record the earliest opportunity. The Prime Minister says he only found out on Tuesday that Peter Mandelson failed the security vetting. The earliest opportunity to correct the record was by Mr. Questions on Wednesday, almost a week ago. This is a breach of the Ministerial Code. Under that code, he is bound to be as open as possible with Parliament and the public in answering questions today. So let me start with what we do know. We know the Prime Minister personally appointed Peter Mandelson to be our ambassador to the United States. We know that Mandelson had a close relationship with a convicted paedophile. We know that he had concerning lists with Russia and China, lists that had already raised red flags. We know that the Prime Minister announced the appointment before vetting was complete, an extraordinary and unprecedented step for the role of US ambassador. The Prime Minister says that it was usual for this because it was a political appointment. So I will remind him and the rest of the Labour front bench that Peter Mandelson was a politician who had been sacked twice from government for lying. That meant he should have gone through the full security process. And we also know, finally, Mr. Speaker, when Peter Mandelson failed the security vetting, he was allowed to continue in the role with access to top secret intelligence security information. This goes beyond propriety and ethics. This is a matter of national security. So let me turn to what we do not know. We still do not know exactly why Peter Mandelson failed that vetting. We do not know what risks our country was exposed to, and we do not know how it is possible. The Prime Minister said repeatedly this was a failure of vetting. Went on television, said things were blatantly incorrect, and not a single advisor or a single official told him that what he was saying wasn't true. At every turn, with every explanation, the government story has become murky and more contradictory. It's time for truth. There are too many questions to ask in the time, Speaker. So I'm now going to ask the Prime Minister just questions, and I've taken the unprecedented step to provide these questions to the Prime Minister in advance. So he has them in front of him. And I have asked these questions to be put online for the public. They and I expect him to answer. The Prime Minister appointed a national security risk to our most sensitive diplomatic post. Let's look at how this happened. The Right Honourable Gentleman told me at PMQs in September 2025 that full due process followed his appointment. We now know that in November 2024, Lord Case, their Cabinet Secretary, told him this process requires security vetting to be done before the appointment. He did not mention any of what Lord Case said in his statement earlier. So first question, does the Prime Minister accept that when he said before the House the full due process was followed, this was not true? Secondly, on the 11th of September last year, journalists asked his Director of Communications if it was true that Mandel had failed security vetting. These allegations were on the front page of the national newspaper, and yet Number 10 did not deny the story. Why? 3. Will the Prime Minister repeat from dispatch box his words last week, and no one in Number 10 was aware before Tuesday that Mandel had failed his vetting? The Prime Minister said he's furious he wasn't told recommendations of vetting. Yet, to the 16th of September, a Foreign Office Minister told Parliament, and I quote, the national security vetting process is really independent of ministers who are not informed of any findings other than the final outcome. This is the government's stated process. So why is the Prime Minister so furious that it was followed? On the 4th of February 2026, the Prime Minister, Mr. Speaker, on 4th of February 2026, the Prime Minister told me from the dispatch box that security vetting he had received had revealed Mandel's relationship with him. How could he say that if he had not seen security vetting? And finally, Mr. Speaker, Sistema is a Russian defense company closely linked to the Kremlin, Vladimir Putin's war machine. Was the Prime Minister aware before the appointment that Peter Mandelson had remained a director of that company long after Russian invasion of Crimea? Mr. Speaker, everyone makes mistakes. It's how you face up to those mistakes that shows the character of a leader. Instead of taking responsibility for the decisions he made, the Prime Minister has thrown his staff and his officials under the bus. This is a man who once said, I will carry in hand the mistakes of any organisation I lead. Instead, he has sacked his Cabinet Secretary, he has sacked his Director of Communications, he has sacked his Chief of Staff, and he has now sacked the Permanent Secretary of the Foreign Office. All of these people fired for a decision he made. The Right Honourable Gentleman stands that he, a former Director of Public Prosecutions, so lacking in curiosity that he chose to ask no questions about vetting process. He asked no questions about Mansell's relationship with Nixon. He asked no questions about the security risk Mansell heard. Apparently, he didn't even seek Peter Mansell for his appointment. It doesn't appear that he asked any questions at all. Why? Because he didn't want to know. He had taken the risk. He had chosen his man what will have to follow. It is the duty of the Prime Minister to ensure he's telling the truth, or does the ministerial code not apply to him? I'm only holding the Prime Minister to the same standard to which he held others. On the 26th of January 2022, the Right Honourable Gentleman to the previous Prime Minister at this dispatch box, if he misled the House, he must resign. Does he stand by their words, or is there one rule for him and another for everyone else?
Mr. Speaker, let me respond to those points. Firstly, when I found out what happened on Tuesday evening last, I wanted to have answered the question who made the decision to to give clearance on developing, contrary to the advice, why that was done and who knew about it, so I could provide the information to the House, Mr. Speaker. That is the exercise that was conducted Tuesday evening and day, so I could come here today to give a look up to the House, which I just let out. Mr. Speaker, she asked me about developing security clearance after the appointment. That wasn't me saying that. I read out the evidence of the former Permanent Secretary about that and the former Cabinet Secretary in relation to that, and I think the quotes that I've given to the House are clear enough in relation to that. She also asked why Peter Mandelson failed. Mr. Speaker, it's important to make a distinction between the information provided to review and the recommendation. The information in the review must be protected and has been protected, because otherwise the integrity of the entire system will fall away. But the recommendation does need to be protected and should not be protected. Mr. Speaker, in relation to her questions, in relation to the answer about full due process, that was the information that I had that I put before the House and was confirmed to me by Chris Wilmot, because in September I asked him to conduct a review of the process to assure me that the process was correctly carried out. He did that and wrote me on the 16th of September, giving me his conclusions. In relation, Mr. Speaker, to reports in the media, Number 10 was repeatedly asked about the facts surrounding Peter Mandel's clearance and was assured the proper process was followed in that case. Mr. Speaker, in relation to those in Number 10, let me give the answer. Nobody in Number 10 was informed about UKSC's recommendation. Mr. Speaker, to speak clear at the record, the Cabinet Office Permanent Secretary did receive information recently and then sought the necessary and legal advice. Once those checks were completed by the Cabinet Office Permanent Secretary, I was told, and in the last 2 weeks ago, it was entirely the right procedure to get the legal advice and then bring it to my attention at the first opportunity. It was right, that procedure was followed by my officials in the last few weeks. Mr. Speaker, in relation to why I was furious about process, for the very reason, Mr. Speaker, I strongly believe I should be given some information at the very outset. I strongly believe there were repeated times when I should be told, on appointment, I should have told when Peter Mandelson was sacked. Cabinet Secretary should be told when he reviewed the process. Foreign Secretary should be told before she was to sign a statement to set the committee, and I should be told on every review of Mr. Speaker. In relation to the point she makes about what I said in February in answer to a question of hers, I make it very clear, Mr. Speaker, I had not seen the security team file. I did not know that UKSC questioned me about vetting. I knew about the due diligence, and that's why I put for the House to tell you about the due diligence in relation to Epstein. The question asked me about vetting, and I knew what due diligence said, and therefore I told the House what due diligence said. I didn't tell what security vetting said because I hadn't seen it in relation to that. Mr. Speaker, in relation to the particular details in relation to Peter Mandelson, I acted on all of the information that I had available to me. The simple fact of the matter is I should have had more information. I didn't have information. The House should have had information, and I now set out in full to the House.
Mr. Speaker. Truth is that my committee did ask. We asked on the record, and we got a partial truth that could hardly be the whole truth. But we were on record asking the very questions the hecklers on the other side should have been asked. And the answers are there on the record to see just what we got when we did ask. Mr. Speaker, may I just to my credit? A month before Mandelson's appointment was announced, the then Cabinet Secretary advised that necessary security clearance should be acquired before confirming political appointment. That doesn't seem to have been the usual practice. I'm glad it's changed because it was clearly abused. Because what happened was somebody, probably Peter Mandelson himself, leaked to the press his appointment as US ambassador, effectively bouncing the appointment and confirming it. Then, when the confirmation did come forward about his appointment, it did not make clear that it was subject to vetting in either the offer letter to Peter Mandelson or in the government's press release. I'm afraid to say, doesn't it look like, for certain members of the Prime Minister's team, getting Peter Mandelson the job was their priority overrode everything else, and the security considerations were very much back in order?
Prime Minister.
Well, thank you for the question. Her committee asked relevant questions, and that's why I have indicated that it was unforgivable. The Foreign Secretary was asked to sign a statement in response to those very questions without being told about the recommendation. The questions were asked. She was advised us to sign a statement without being told the relevant information. That's unforgivable. After the committee for developing have changed that process. Now, so it can never happen again. She heard me quote the evidence for Cabinet Secretary and the former permanent Secretary in relation to that. Mr. Speaker, can I just deal with the third point it makes? And that is that somehow the Downing Street's wish to appoint Peter Mandelson overrode security concerns. Mr. Speaker, let me be very clear. I have been told that Peter Mandelson or anybody else failed security and not being given clearance on security vetting. I would not have appointed them. A deliberate decision was taken to withhold that material from. A deliberate decision to take to withhold material. This was not a lack of asking. This wasn't an oversight. It was a decision. It was a decision taken not to share that information on repeated occasions.
Senate Leader of the Democrats.
Mr. Speaker, it's 2022 all over again. Back then, when he stood on this side of the House, it was Boris Johnson who was accused of misleading Parliament and scapegoating senior officials. The then leader of the opposition couldn't have been clearer. The public need to know, he said, not all politicians are the same. Not all politicians put themselves above their country, and policy, integrity and accountability matter. So he promised change, Mr. Speaker. He promised to break the cycle and stop the chaos. And he promised a government with, and I quote, more focus on long-term strategy, not the short-term distractions that limit Westminster. I'm afraid the fact that he even had to make the statement today shows how badly he has failed. How badly he has done the millions of people across our country who are so desperate for change. He blamed his officials. He said he had no idea. He has every impression of a Prime Minister in office, but not in power. Facts remain, even on his own account. The Prime Minister appointed Peter Mandelson as ambassador to the United States, even after he had been warned about his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. The Prime Minister announced the appointment before Mandelson had been elected, despite the clear risk to national security of putting someone unsuitable in that role. And while his top officials, just 3 weeks into the job, clearly believed the Prime Minister wanted Mandelson to be appointed regardless of what the vetting process turned up. And the Prime Minister relied on the vetting process to defend his decisions. So why did he ask so few questions personally about the vetting process itself? We all know the truth, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister knew that appointing Mandelson was an enormous risk. He decided it was a risk worth taking, a catastrophic error of judgment. And now that it's blown up in his face, the only decent thing to do is to take responsibility. Back in 2022, the Prime Minister rightly accused Boris Johnson of letting others to take blame while he clung on. That was not acceptable then, and it's not acceptable now. So I hope the Prime Minister can at least tell us this, and we'll listen very carefully to his honour. Was he given advice by summoning case, the then Cabinet Secretary, the necessary security clearances should be acquired before he confirmed his choice for US ambassador? And did he follow that advice? Yes or no? Mr. Speaker, after years of chaos under the Conservatives, we needed a government focused on the interests of the people, the cost of living crisis, the health and care crisis, our national security. We needed a government honest, integrity and accountability. So will the Prime Minister finally accept that the only way he can help deliver that is to resign?
Mr. Speaker, set out in my statement all facts. And in September, when Bloomberg Market Light asked Cabinet to review the Cabinet Secretary to review the process. He told me the process was as it should have been. And as soon as the information about security came last Tuesday, I was fact established I update Parliament. He asked me about the instrument before developing. It's evident that I've given to House from the former Cabinet Secretary and from the former Cabinet Secretary. In relation to the Ambassador Simon case, Mr. Speaker, when I asked the former Cabinet Secretary to review the process after September 25, he specifically addressed whether the process had been followed by referencing the Simon case letter and ensured that the process was the right process we have followed. So in answer to the question, that was specifically looked at, the review was in September of last year.
The
Prime Minister has gone on at considerable length about process and procedure, but ordinary people don't really care about process and procedure. They want transparency and want to know that they can have confidence in the words of politicians in this chamber. On the question of Peter Mandelson, it was in the 90s that Peter Mandelson had to resign from Cabinet for the first time because of his dealings with the millionaire Jeffrey Robinson. It was a few years later he had resigned from Cabinet for the second time because of his relationship with the millionaire Hinduja family. Mandelson has a history. Peter Mandelson has a history. And what this House wants to know is why, knowing Peter Mandelson history, going back now 30 years, given what has been known, it's one thing to say, as he insists on saying, nobody told me. Nobody told me anything. Nobody told me. The question is, why didn't the Prime Minister ask?
In relation to, let me be clear, I've not appointed Peter Mandelson. As soon as further revelations came to light, I did ask the Cabinet Secretary to review the process, so I could be assured about this period on the 16th of September, setting up the conclusions of that review, and assuring me the process has been followed properly.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister has spoken about process and the reviews and trying to put that which went wrong right. That is to be supported. But he's also asked the House of the country to believe, notwithstanding a front-page media slash that Peter Mandelson had failed the vetting process, there was nobody in number 10 or in any government part that even thought to say, is there any truth in this? Could I have a briefing on that? We need to knock this story down. If nobody asked, that is the shameful thing. And if nobody asked, does it not say to the Prime Minister that the operation of his government, which seems to be process, strategy, review, never my fault, is not stable and is not welcomed by the country at large?
In answer to this question, the FDJ was repeatedly asked in light of inquiries. The same answer came back because a clear decision had been taken that this information was not going to be disclosed. And it wasn't just me, let alone to anybody else. So yes, repeatedly the FDA was asked. The same answer came back as the answer was given to me. The decision was that I wasn't to know, nobody else was to know. That was wrong.
Frankly, on this side of the House, please, for my friend, many will appreciate his apology today, but many will remain bewildered still by appointment placed by the warning that many of us give. Isn't the reality this? That when he sought to realise his ambition to become leader of the Labour Party, with a little piece of the Labour Party, he became dependent on McSweeney and Mandelson, labored together to organise, fund his election. And when he became Prime Minister, the reward for McSweeney was control of number 10, and for Mandelson, the highest diplomatic office. And the message, the unspoken message to the civil servant was, what Mandelson wants, Mandelson gets. This has damaged the party I've been a member of for 50 years. I urge him to take steps to clear this toxic culture out of our party. I think the first step by having an independent inquiry to lay together.
Mr. Speaker, can I just deal with what's at the heart of action in relation to civil servants? I don't say that. Mr. Speaker, is simply not good enough on a question of national security where clearance of recommendation should be denied for anyone, particularly senior civil servant, do anything other than provide me with relevant information, and that's what would happen in the state.
Sir Jeremy Wright.
Very much, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister has been very clear about his view of the urgency of his response since he learned of this information. So I want to ask about the events of last week. He will know that the Intelligence and Security Committee asked for any information relevant to vetting to be supplied to it in the first tranche of information we would consider. We didn't receive anything about vetting at that time. The Prime Minister has told us now that on Tuesday evening he became aware of the information he has set out. But the Intelligence and Security Committee was not told about the existence of that information. Information the Prime Minister must have recognised was within terms of the humble address and would need to be supplied to the ICC. We were not told by his officials about the existence of that information until Thursday, after it had been published, its existence had been published in the Guardian newspaper. So I'm bound to ask the Prime Minister this. If that information's existence had not been disclosed by the press, would we have been told about it? And if so, why did the ISC have to learn of its existence from The Guardian and not from government?
Thank you for the question. And the answer is yes, it would have been provided to the committee. I think it has been provided to the committee. The reason for the delay is on Tuesday night I found out simply that the recommendation be made to deny clearance and yet clearance be given. I want to understand who gave that clearance, on what basis, and who knew about it. So I can obviously make the information available to the committee, and that's what I asked on Tuesday night my official urgent to do, so the full should have been put before both the House and the committee, and I make sure that the full should be put before the committee.
Speaker, many of my constituents are rightly appalled that someone who treat not just our country but every single victim of trafficking was able to serve such a prestigious position. Whatever the judgment of security setting file, that decision to appoint was wrong. And I welcome Prime Minister's owning an apology for the moment. My constituents also rightly learn that the single democratically elected official incumbent was full out position. Given this, what undertakings is Prime Minister to gain much across government to ensure that the future to our democratic decision making so it's in full picture for crucial.
Can I thank you, Mr. Speaker? That's precisely what I've asked for the entire voting process to be reviewed by Secretary in full board. And I made it absolutely clear to this House and to the civil service. My strong view is that the information that was not provided me could have been provided and should have been provided.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister wants us to focus on process and not his judgment. But this entire episode is the direct result of his decision to make direct appointment to one of the most senior roles in the FCDO of somebody who was wholly appropriate for the role. So can the Prime Minister at least confirm to the House that this was a singular error of judgment and that his unpleasant operation has not posed political appointee for any other senior role in the FCDO?
In relation to the decision, yes, my decision was error of judgment. That's why I apologise to the teams I've seen. I've done it again today. I'm right to say. In relation to the second point of this question, whether any other little points, I will have to just check on that and get back to him because I'm not. There are many points made. Very many points made to decisions. I'll just check for him.
Mr. Speaker, how can the public understand the importance of independent security vetting and why sensitive personal information must be protected? They're also shocked that decisions of such significance would be taken without the knowledge of the Prime Minister. I work closely with the Prime Minister and know how seriously he takes national security and accountability to this House. So can the Prime Minister set out what steps he will take to remove any ambiguity? So where there are serious concerns, the risks of elected ministers ensure that accountability to the House to the country is always held.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. That is why last week the Chief Secretary removed the spent the power of the FDDO to make a recommendation to take a decision contrary to the recommendation of UKSD.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has twice remarked both the Leader of the Opposition, then the Liberal Democrats, when he said that the then Cabinet Secretary's advice to the Prime Minister was to get the clearance before the announcement. So I'm going to read one sentence from a document entitled Options Trade to Make Washington from the Cabinet Secretary to him personally. It says, if this is the route you wish to take, you should give us the name of the person like report, and we will develop a plan for them to acquire the necessary security clearances and do due diligence on any potential conflict of interest or other issues of which you should be aware before confirming which action. How does it hear about what Mr. Woodall said a year later? That's the advice then. Why didn't he follow it?
Mr. Speaker, it reads out the button, Mr. Casey's advice. The process that was followed was what understood to be the usual process. In other words, it was subject to the security setting. Why, when Sir Chris Walmart looked at it in September, he addressed the question by reference back to Simon Casey's letter. Because I wanted to know the process that had been followed was the right process. And that is what Sir Chris Walmart looked at. He looked at it by reference to the Simon Casey's letter that has just been read out and assured me that the right process was followed when he reviewed it.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Anybody who knows the Prime Minister will know full well that he would never, ever deliberately mislead his House. But the reality is this, Mr. Speaker. Ex post facto vetting is utterly pointless when the appointment is political. And the trouble, Mr. Speaker, that we all face is that trust in the Prime Minister and in politics is diminishing as this sorry saga continues. So in the 17 days we have leading to those very important elections, never mind question, those very important elections, what does the Prime Minister propose to do to win back the trust of the country?
Mr. Speaker, in relation to his point about vetting political appointments, I don't agree, but I do agree that the due diligence for direct ministerial appointments should be the same as all the other appointments. And it clearly wasn't. And that's when I ordered that it be changed in order to make sure it's the same process of whether it's direct ministerial appointment or any other appointment. In relation to the country, Mr. Speaker, it is important we remain focused on the cost of living and dealing with the war and trust we face in this country and to do that.
Stephen Flynn.
In this entire process is that the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom chose to proactively ignore the victims of Jeffrey Epstein when he made the political choice to put Peter Mandelson in as the UK's most senior diplomat in the United States of America, despite knowing that he has maintained friendship with Jeffrey Epstein himself. We have since seen Peter Mandelson investigated for potential misconduct in public office. We, of course, now learn through media that Mandelson had failed security vetting. The Prime Minister blames all this, all of the judgment of others. I'm interested in his judgment. Does he believe himself to be gullible, incompetent, or both?
Yeah. Mr. Speaker, I thank you for the question. I've laid out the relevant facts. It's absolutely clear that nobody is suggesting this information was made available to. It clearly wasn't made available. It should be made available, and I'm not made it made available. That is why I set out some considerable detail to the House with relevant quotes from all the relevant players in this.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister has been candid about some of the challenges in this process. I'm sure he will share frustration across this House that revelations keep coming and the matter keeps coming back to Parliament. Now, he says that he has acted to address any further challenges in the vetting system for the government for senior appointments. Can he therefore give all our constituents and this House the reassurance that he has no further sense will be any challenges to any other senior appointments through the vetting process that this government has made?
Mr. Speaker, that is precisely why I asked for a review to be carried out of the security vetting. I have reason to believe that to be the case, but want to be assured about the security vetting process, and that's why I've asked Fraser and Wolf to look at it, that can give you that further assurance. We'll just pass that on to the House.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Prime Minister just told us that after he sacked Mandelson, he changed the process so that now appointment cannot be announced until after security vetting passed. Why did he do that? He didn't think there was a problem with the security vetting.
Well, Mr. Speaker, in September, it became clear to me that in relation to the due diligence being carried out at the Cabinet Office, Mandelson had been asked just by my staff and given answers which were untruthful. That was exposed by Bloomberg emails. At that point, I became concerned about the entire process. I asked for a review of the process by Chris Wilmore, which he carried out, but I also made it clear that I would change the due process so that whether it's direct ministerial appointment or any other appointment, the same process was gone through. And I also want to make clear that I did think that it was right that appointments should be announced for security vetting was gone through in any circumstance, and therefore I changed it straight away.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My constituents are deeply concerned about the appointment of Peter Mandelson and they want complete transparency going forward. I'm really concerned to read that the civil servants in their Cabinet Office may have had this information about a month ago. It has taken them this long to be able to be in a position where they share the information with the democratically elected person making this appointment. What can the Prime Minister share with us today so that we don't have to face this type of issue going forward?
Can I just that head on? What happened was the information came to the attention of senior civil servants who were in fact doing the plots work on public address. When they saw the information about their vetting, they took legal part straight away to ask whether it was legal to disclose that to me. They got advice. As soon as the advice was given, they disclosed it to me straight away last Tuesday. It was the right and appropriate thing for them to just criticise what they did.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We know that last September, MI6's finding Mansell's compromising business interests was accurate. I mentioned to myself on September 15, 2025. Failed his security vetting. We also know former Cabinet Secretary advised Prime Minister to carry out security clearance Mandelson before his appointment. It was reported in the Times yesterday that Mandelson was given STRAP, very, very highest security vetting, well beyond DV, despite being failed DV. It's likely that the Americans will have serious questions about what secret of theirs a compromised British ambassador might have accessed. Despite all this, we also know that the PM number 10 were utterly determined to appoint Mandelson as ambassador to DCC, come hell or high water. My question is why?
I have ordered a review of any national security issues raising relation to what I asked Tuesday, and I'll update the House when that review is complete.
Dr. Rupert. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I also thank the Prime Minister for his heartfelt statement. And if they're judging party selections, not words, for relying post of anti-governance, it was vacant for 3 of his predecessors, years and years, starting with Boris Johnson's lockdown breaches. So, can I ask the Prime Minister, now that we have the heavyweight Margaret Hodge in post, what plans does he have for this broader policy area?
Well, I'm sure that Margaret Hodge did a very good job in that role. She's done so many other roles previously.
Who first suggested with the Prime Minister that Mandelson should be appointed as our ambassador to the United States, or was it just his own idea? Did it never cross his mind that Mandelson was at risk of failing the vetting process? And before sacking Oliver Robbins last week, did the Prime Minister ask him why he overruled the verdict of security vetters? And if so, what was his explanation?
I did ask him, I didn't get an explanation. That's why I sacked him.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. At the beginning of February, in February 2026, we learned that Peter Mandelson had shared highly sensitive government information with Jerry Epstein from the former Prime Minister Gordon Brown. At that juncture, if there was an issue, I would be forensic in recognising security risks and wanting detailed answers. What's not adding up for me is why we are now in mid-April before we get this information, and why the Prime Minister didn't drill down to ensure that we had security information which clearly we learned that Peter Mandelson had breached.
Mr. Speaker, at that point, I did ask order the review of the security vetting because I was concerned it had failed. In fact, because of information I was given hadn't failed, it actually given the recommendation that clearance should be denied. The fact that when I ordered a review of UK SB, senior officials in the Foreign Office didn't at that stage, at the last stage, brings my attention to the information they have is astonishing. Because I was under a review of the process which looked as though it had failed. In fact, had flagged the relevant concerns.
Thank you, Speaker. First, a point from my honourable friend and member for New Forest West. I put Mr. Dewitt to the House and tell us what Ollie Roberts' response to him was when he said overall matters. Because in my experience, that senior officials are very keen to deliver on the wishes of ministers, particularly newly elected Prime Minister. And my concern here is that implicitly, as other members made the point, Sir Ollie Roberts was responding to a desire from the Prime Minister, because it's perfectly clear in all of the newspapers the legislature are out there about P. Madison, but the Prime Minister decided to proceed anyway. They wished to deliver on the desire of the Minister. That's why he overruled the advice, and I fear also gave him the Prime Minister a degree of plausible deniability.
Let me answer that in relation to. Sorry, let's start by saying a distinguished career. I must say that. I'm still not standing that he should have provided the information. I mean, could have provided it to me. He's being out tomorrow, but I can say to the House that when I spoke to him on Thursday, his view to me was that he couldn't provide this information to me because he wasn't allowed to provide the information to me. I don't want to put words in his mouth because it's very important to give no evidence. In relation to the question being asked of me, when I said why wasn't this shared with you, I've been asked what question I put to him, I've been asked to answer, and I'm trying to give that. I'm trying to give it without being into Ollie Robbins' mouth, because I don't think that's for me to do so. What he said to me was essentially that he took the view that this process did not allow him to disclose to me recommendation UK FE. No doubt he'll be asked questions about that. That is the reason that he gave me.
Sir Champion.
There are 6 armed conflicts raging around the world. I've known international diplomatic relationship to be more fractured. FCDOs pushing through 40% cuts of aid and 25% cuts of staff, all under the watch of the permanent Secretary. So can I ask the Prime Minister what risk assessment was carried out before he was removed?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I was dealing with a very issue. I asked my team to establish the facts that she's denied. I spoke to the former Home Secretary on Thursday night. As a result of the information I had and the exchanges I had, I made that I no longer had confidence in him.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The problem the Prime Minister's got is no one believes it. The public don't believe him. MPs on this side of the House don't believe him. His own global backbenchers don't believe him. So does the Prime Minister agree with me? He's lying.
Sorry, we won't use those words, and I'm sure the member withdraw.
Mr. Speaker, I have great respect for you and your office, but I'll not withdraw. That man couldn't lie straight in bed.
Ms. Danson, you'll have to leave. Phil Reynolds.
Speaker, when Sir Ollie Roberts came before the Foreign Affairs Committee on 3rd of November last year, he was asked by my honourable friend, member for Liverpool Wolf, whether, in the context setting, Lord Madison's appointment was escalated. Society and EU to maintain the integrity of the vetting system, so Ollie replied, and I quote, "I certainly cannot comment on that, I'm afraid." Does the Prime Minister not find it reverse that when specifically asked by members of Parliament about Anderson's vetting, Sir Ollie declined to discuss the very topic we are now debating in this House?
Well, I've read that evidence, and it makes my strong view that the recommendation of UKSC could and should have been shared with me, and could and should have been shared with the Foreign Secretary, and thus with the Select Committee. Actually.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Further to the question raised by my honourable friend member for Hartshire, Mr. Speaker, is not pretty poor form for the Prime Minister shows the blame for this, particularly onto Ollie Robbins, a fine and experienced civil servant who was appointed 2 days after Prime Ministers Madison announcement. Surely, Mr. Speaker, the buck stops at the top.
Ollie Robbins has a distinguished career, and I've worked with him over a number of years. Nonetheless, he could and should have aired this crucially relevant information with the, before Peter Madison took up his post, and should have done various points after that. And it would be because of that I lost confidence in him. It doesn't mean he hasn't got a distinguished career. He does have a distinguished career.
Prime Minister for statement. I know the Prime Minister is aware that public confidence in politicians needs to be improved in order to retain the public trust. With this in mind, reform has been accepting donations from millionaires in cryptocurrency. Every reporting who actually funds it. As Prime Minister of Kenya, reform relying on millionaires donating cryptocurrency is a security risk.
We're taking that message in relation to...
Let's move on.
Mr. Speaker, in the readout of the Prime Minister's meeting on the 15th of April on it says, and I quote, "There is no evidence that the decision to grant DB, despite UKFB advice, had been disclosed to anyone outside FCDO and UKSV until the document itself shared with the Permanent Secretary of the Cabinet Office. You're therefore saying that neither the Chair of the Joint Committee on Intelligence nor the National Security Advisor were aware of the security risk with our most important strategic ally until the vetting document itself was shared with Cabinet."
I understand that to be the case. Obviously, no, I understand it isn't my decision to withhold it. I understand, if I've understood Sir Ollie's position correctly, that argument is he can't share it or couldn't share it with anyone. No, with anyone. Certainly wasn't shared with the National Security Advisor. Don't think it was shared with anybody else. It's a question as far as I know, it hasn't been until it was seen by officials, legal advisors, and showed me it wasn't shared with anybody else.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank the Prime Minister for his statement. The clarity contained within that and put it up to the GN. Despite protestations of leaders of parties, properly, and including some of these benches as well. I'm sure everybody in this House agrees that the government today should take cost of intelligence vetting services and act on it. In view of everything we've heard, this is a fundamental question for me. How can government act on intelligence service vetting advice if ministers were getting to that advice?
Well, Mr. Speaker, it means that if the recommendation UKSB is effectively the final decision, so of course, so in the Foreign Office, there is additional part of the process in which final decisions are taken by foreign officials rather than the recommendation UKSB. That is what has now been suspended, so the Foreign Office as well, the recommendation of UKSB is what happens.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister knows that he is the main character in an ongoing national scam. And given all the blame apportioned in his statement, it is incredible that only one person has lost their decision. But the Prime Minister also recognised it is incredible to learn that in Northern Ireland, a political appointment was made following the refusal to clear an individual for security access, that they have continued in their post, engaged on issues connected with the legacy of our troubled past with full security clearance, despite security service concerns, and they continue to this day. If the Prime Minister order a review, will he ensure it includes within a terms of reference or separately a deep dive into the appointment of Marie Anderson, the Northern Ireland Police Ombudsman? Why she was appointed, why the secured information was ignored, how this can be the case?
Thank you, I will ensure the review covers all the relevant issues and material and take into account.
The Prime Minister has the right to expect that his senior civil servants will always tell him the truth and the whole truth. He will recall that Mrs Thatcher used to say of Lord Young she liked David because he always brought her solutions and not problems, while other ministers brought her problems. Does he believe that there is a problem within the civil service, that promotion and advancement is on the back of not giving your ministers problems, and that on this occasion the senior official at the FTDO knew that if he did tell the Prime Minister what he ought to have told the Prime Minister, he was bringing him a problem?
Thank you. Just be clear. We have thousands of civil servants acting every day with integrity and professionalism, doing all their progress ability. As I understand what Ollie is saying he couldn't give me this information. He was prohibited from doing so. I disagree with him. I think should have given this information, but I don't think that there's any reason to suggest that the civil service people act for improperly.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I just point out that the developing process has always been highly protected, because otherwise it wouldn't work. People will not give information to the development process if they thought that any detail of that was likely to be disclosed, or even if the results, the assessment that medium or high risk were likely to be exposed. And that is why previous Labour government in 2010 wrote into the Constitutional Reform Government Act Section 3 in order to prohibit that disclosure. And if you're now saying development vetting is now going to be available to ministers on a routine basis, would it be undermining the very process upon which we depend for our national security?
I don't agree with this analysis. I certainly agree that the information that's provided into the process by the applicant has to be protected, because anybody who's been through the process now, it's an incredibly detailed and intrusive process, and it's very important that individuals give full and truthful accounts of all the questions that that's why that needs to be protected. I do not accept that means that the recommendation of the UKSB cannot be shared with ministers, including the Prime Minister. I think there's a distinction between the two. I accept the first, I utterly reject the second.
The Foreign Office share the outcome of the vetting process, but not the conclusions of the vetting reports, not just the detail, but the conclusions too. If Prime Minister is going to own a decision, he needs to know what is within it, what changes will be making to stop this happening.
Thank you for the question, and that's why our review of the entire process that can be looked at from start to finish, including the question of whether there should be any circumstances in which the recommendation of UKSB could not be followed.
Lisa Smart.
Could I a number of members, members asked question, I'm quite sure I heard an answer from the Prime Minister. Why did the Prime Minister choose to ignore the advice from the then Cabinet Secretary, Zion Case, seek security lesson before confirming Keith Wimbledon as his pick?
I understood the appointment made subject to security vetting. That's what I was thought. The question is the question I raised in September, which is I asked Chris Allman to look at the process, and in particular, he looked at the advice of the letter Zion Case to answer the question, was the process flowed? And he gave me the answer that he thought right, having completed that process.
I thank my honourable friend for his debate. For clarity, could he confirm who and when the UK security vetting report outcomes were made available? And also, what guidance has been to senior officials on matters that must be escalated to their ministers?
The process with the UKSB informed CEO of their findings and their recommendation, and then there's an escalation process in the sense that it is the FCDO in these particular cases to take the final decision, which is what they did in this case.
Speaker, I want to return again to the real know what this is. The Prime Minister knew
as we all knew, about his representation as who should be the ambassador in this particular case, and the Sackwatt's cabinet. But more than that, in the public domain at the time, were all his links clear with the Chinese companies and his meetings with Xi. Furthermore, his time was sustainable when he stayed there after 2014 in the invasion. Not just that, his meetings with Putin, and of course, his relationship with Deripaska, who was negotiating on the tax levels and tariffs on aluminium when he was the EU Commissioner responsible. So with all that going on, his announcement of this man into the ambassador position, why do you think that therefore he did know something about him? He knew he was corrupt, he was corrupting, and he was the wrong choice. So that's why he had done a cases review, a case advice, to have a review before he made this decision.
No, that's not the case. The judgment control was made judgment call, and that was and I apologise for it, particularly to the victims of Epstein. But the vetting process was carried out in the way I indicated to the House. I should have been bold at the time of the recommendation. Had I been bold, I wouldn't be appointed.
Today's statement may well be about process and procedure, but surely, Prime Minister, the real issue is why, when Peter Mandelson's reputation was already known, was he ever considered for such an important role?
Prime Minister. Well, Mr. Speaker, I've accepted that was my decision and I apologise for it.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister said staggeringly unforgivable he wasn't told about vetting. But really staggeringly unforgivable is that he appointed Peter Mandelson before vetting, and he appointed Peter Mandelson knowing about friendship with people Epstein. So unforgivable that the Prime Minister was more concerned with pandering to Donald Trump, the standing victims in the office. Now, the Prime Minister has not accepted as impulsory his civil servants. He thinks that the country thinks as impulsory is inadequate from him. Will he take personal responsibility for his staggering and unforgivable judgment to resign?
Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I've set out the House I had in this particular case. I am staggered. I feel unbelievable. I wasn't given the information I should have given.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister made the political decision to appoint Peter Mandelson, but central to that decision, along with other policy and political position decisions, would have been the Prime Minister's former Chief Staff, Morgan McSweeney. Can the Prime Minister confirm to the House whether Morgan McSweeney passed all his security vetting, confirm whether or not Morgan McSweeney had handled documents for which he had anything other than the appropriate level of clearance?
All the appropriate and necessary development has taken place on 10. Nobody has passed that.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If, as even assured, there was no law that prevented Permanent Under Secretary telling the Prime Minister the outcome of Mandelson's development vetting, then presumably by the same token, there is no law that prevented the Prime Minister from asking. So can he be very clear with the House on one point? Did he, as Prime Minister, ever ask the question, did Mandelson fail his vetting? And if he did ask that question, who did he ask that question of, and when did he ask it?
Peter Mandelson was given to vetting clearance. That was the clear position. He was given clearance. That's the facts as I've said about.
Prime Minister has always had the utmost integrity and honour. He's been dealing with this House, and he's an eminent lawyer who understands the consequences of deliberately coming here to deceive Parliament. On top of that, he also understands the likelihood of a paper trail unravelling such a deception. So it's inconceivable that he would intentionally mislead the House. But does he agree with me that all the documents relevant to this matter must be made public in accordance with the humble address that was passed on the 4th of February, and that no ministers or officials should engage trying to prevent any of those documents being made public?
Yes, we will complete the humble address in full. That is the process that's going on.
Thank you, Speaker. The Prime Minister said today, I know many members across this House will find this fact to be incredible. He's right, we do, along with his staggering lack of curiosity and his inability to take on board warnings about his good friend Peter Mandelson. Because the Prime Minister was given a due diligence document by the Cabinet Office, which told him several reasons why Peter Mandelson should not be appointed. Fair advice from government, business stealing in Russia and China, and the fact that he maintained a relationship with Epstein after his imprisonment for fear. The Prime Minister knew this, but appointed him anyway. Why, Prime Minister? Why?
Peter Mandelson was asked questions on the back of the due diligence exercise, and he didn't tell the truth in those answers. Look, the decision to appoint him was error. It was my error, and I apologise for it.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is accepted by many in these benches that the Prime Minister did not know the outcome of the vetting. But the Cabinet Secretary came on Tuesday, and she clearly spent a month researching whether or not she could provide advice that she did. So she really thought very carefully of the information that she brought. When the Prime Minister then launched an investigation, rather than coming straight to the House with the information that she had provided, was that because the information was insufficient to present to the House? And if so, when was he planned to come to the House?
It was insufficient because all it told me was that the recommendation of UKSC was to deny clearance. What it didn't tell you was who then provided the clearance, why did they do it, and who knew. They were questions that the House obviously want to raise with me. And that's my urgent ask for those facts to be attached to the House today and provide a full count that have provided to the House.
Before someone has, and I quote, frequent and uncontrolled access to top secret material or any access to top secret coded, otherwise known as STRAT material. The Prime Minister's promised full transparency by asking 3 questions. Did Mr. Mandelson have access to any top secret STRAT material before his DV clearance 20th of January? Did Peter Mandelson have any restrictions placed on his access to top-secret material during his time in Washington? And if so, had the Prime Minister assured himself that Mandelson did not leak any of this material, just as he leaked commercially confidential material to Jeffrey Epstein and Gordon Brown?
I do not understand that he had access to material before he took his post as ambassador. He did have access after a couple of votes, and I would review any security concerns may arise.
In all findings, that some felt security vetting to the point to such a sensitive and critical role, and it's even more staggering to heard that the Prime Minister was informed of that failure. I agree with what the Minister said. Did need to know details. We didn't know that he'd failed the security vetting. In terms of the detail, the one to ask the Prime Minister this: if people didn't know the concerns were security for Peter Mandelson, how can any other state deal with him on sensitive security issues? I understand the Prime Minister doing an inquiry into that, but it's very important that Parliament is on the side of that issue, because I'm very concerned there's been another failure there to Manchester's security interest.
I think in a case such as this, in relation to sensitive post, I think it's right somebody should be able to talk if the UKSC are recommending that clearance is not given. So that would be my position on this.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. When I was privileged to serve as Security Minister, Prime Minister my shadow, and dealing matters of most significant national security, it was straightforward with me as I was with him. So I will answer this straightforward question. The Home Address made clear that the ISC will see any material related to national security or international relations. In the course of our work, we clearly liaised with the Cabinet Office. When did the Cabinet Office know about this failure in vetting? Who knew? And why didn't we bring that material to the ISC when they found it? Well, we hadn't received it when he found out that this vetting had failed, and yet others must have known that it had failed.
We just the situation was that as part of the work being on the Humble Address, this information came aside. Senior officials immediately took legal advice on whether it could be disclosed. Having that legal advice, immediately discussed it to me. I think that was the process. I think it had now been disclosed to the committee, albeit I think Thursday rather than Tuesday. But that was the process. And just to find out, I do think we're right for the senior officials in this information to get legal advice on whether they could disclose it and who do. I think that was the right thing to do. As soon as they got the advice, they brought my attention.
This is very self and extension pushing upon his 2 hours of which he was formerly a member. Does the Prime Minister agree that the famous Armstrong memorandum on conduct of the civil service was correct and holds true today, and it said, it is the duty of civil servant made available to Mr. all the information and experience at his or her disposal, which may have a bearing on the policy decisions to which he is committed or preparing to make, and to give to the Minister honest and impartial advice without fear or favour, and whether the ties accord with the Minister's view or not.
Yes, I agree with that. That's why this information could and should be shared at first opportunity, and that was before Peter Mandelson took up his post as ambassador.
The Prime Minister is hiding behind a thicket of legalese and procedure, but he has a track record of appointing like the most favoured sons and daughters to plum government jobs and to the House of Lords. In Wales, we know all about Labour colony culture. The could get UK's favourite person is John Giffen, brought up in the 10 spot of Dolly Maidens, and now ticked for peerage. But the timing, Mr. Speaker. How he claimed his party, his role in bringing down Labour's century dominance and waste in the forthcoming elections.
Mr. Speaker, I just a question about process in relation to Peter Mandelson. I think that added some detail. The House and answered the questions.
March 2024, Prime Minister announcing Peter Mandelson, the new ambassador, that he had unrivaled experience. This was despite the gravity of what was known about his record and available publicly. It's not the case that Peter Mandelson's political appointment, which was personally decided by the Prime Minister and announced publicly before the security committee was completed, needed to progress and had to happen. However, it happened because of Mandelson's role in the implementation of leadership campaign because it served the interests of one particular faction in the Labour Party.
Mr. Speaker, I don't accept that is reason for withholding from me the information about security clearance.
Joe Whittingdale. The result of the Prime Minister's terrible failure of judgment is that for over a year, this country's interests were represented in the United States as someone that our own security services deemed to be a security risks. Will he assure us that an investigation will take place into all aspects where our national security may be damaged, and the result of that will be made available to the Intelligence Security Committee and where pulse hold Parliament?
Yes, I will.
Leave the 2 weeks to this. One is about process, and the other one is about judgment. On process, I believe the Prime Minister, where the Prime Minister was not told about security vetting clearance, and had he known, he would have sacked him. We don't have a problem. The problem is, I wasn't told that who's actually running country, and other ministers are kept by civil servants. On judgment issue, it was wrong and completely wrong in the first place to put Mandelson forward as ambassador. With the Prime Minister rightly confirming this week that no one is in position to follow the advanced security vetting process of all political appointments that we made.
This included review this afternoon as I've got findings social with House.
Mr. Speaker, this saga is drawing to close. It will come to a conclusion with the Prime Minister's designation whether he can accept that or not. What I can't accept is that ask me no secrets that tell you no lies regime that he expects us to believe prevail the very top of government between officials, not just ministers, but the Prime Minister. He talked a lot today about what he didn't know, what he wasn't told. Well, he knew that Mandelson had a serious human frailty for other people's width. We knew that Mandelson was involved with Russians. We knew that Mandelson was sacked twice as a government minister. Can the Prime Minister explain what was Mandelson actually
actual qualities that he was pursuing as Royal US ambassador, and what steps he taken to contain serious and measurable breach of national security that his point of Peter Manson facilitated.
Mr. Speaker, I make the reserve to Peter Manson. There is a review going into any security issues may arise.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I welcome the Prime Minister saying that he should not have appointed Peter Manson. In November, for an Affairs Committee, I asked about who needs vetting and was told by Sir Ollie Robbins, obviously the vast majority are relatively straightforward. Ones that require more senior judgment and potentially a discussion about managing and mitigating risks are escalated appropriately. Questions being asked by a foreign secretary or ministers or prison number 10 should be a signal to civil servants to escalate this matter, given the controversial nature of this political appointment. So I would like to ask the Prime Minister that the concerns about linked to Epstein, to other countries or anything else were raised by him in conversations about his appointment at just before time of his appointment that would have signalled that civil service should escalate.
Prime Minister. Well, Mr. Speaker, two different processes. One was due to the process carried out by the Cabinet Office in which Peter Manson was asked questions. Separately, there was the voting process in which the recommendation of UKFB was not shared with me until Tuesday evening.
There are two different ways in which MMs can inadvertently mislead the House. One is by the things that they say, but one is by the things that they don't say. And that's why I'm interested in the letter that my trouble friend, the member for Poppington, raised, one from Lord Case, but that seems to have been written to the Prime Minister in November 2024, advising to political government when ambassadorial role ought to be preceded by full security vetting before it was announced. It was announced by the Prime Minister in December 2024. Did he write on his decision there that he wanted it to be subject to passing a full security vetting? What did he write on his note?
Mr. Speaker, I asked it to subject to develop vetting, but it was because of the process in September 25 I asked Cornwall to do a review for me of process, and he did that with reference back to the Simon Case letter.
Thank you, Speaker. I'm sure the Prime Minister is aware of the damage this target has done to public in politics and politicians. However, I would like him to next focus, and the focus of the government is on the issues that matter most to the constituent in January, in particular, tackling cost of living.
Well, absolutely, Mr. Speaker. The focus of the government is on the fact we're facing a wrong 2 months with serious consequences for the country, and we absolutely need to deal with cost of living, which is the number one issue for our up and down country.
Heard views from the United States administration take a decision in Foreign Office to assist with Manson and UK ambassador to Washington DC after the vetting advice was received there.
Prime Minister. I believe that they did. This was UK security vetting carried out in the way out of the House. The issue is that the recommendation was shared with it was a matter in the United Kingdom.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank the Prime Minister for his statement. Could the Prime Minister provide the House with an update on the proposed legislation to remove peerage from mysteries peer like Peter Manson, who has fallen so far below what is expected of those serving in the House of Lords?
Yes, I'm making that legislation works progressively.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Stating the obvious, the Prime Minister has based his defence today and over this whole saga around his claim that he wasn't told. He wasn't told that Manson failed security vetting and said 11 times in his statement he wasn't told. I'm just wondering how many times and on which specifics did he himself directly ask for that information?
Mr. Speaker, I wasn't told, and I think anybody is disputing that. The clearance given on the 29th of January 2025, the information was not provided to me. In September, I did ask specifically about process. I did ask about the process. Sir Chris Oldman has made it clear to me that in carrying out that view, he was not told about the security clearance recommendation was made. I think on both occasions that information should be provided both to me and then to Cabinet Secretary.
I thank the Prime Minister for his statement. In answer to my honourable friend earlier in his statement, the Minister said that he delayed coming to this House so that he could answer, amongst other questions, why UK SB was overruled. It seems wholly incredible that the decision was made on personal whim by a senior civil servant. Is it not that it was made because of political pressure from number 10 to advance the man who a particular fact in the Labour Party had looked to for foreign spiritual leadership for years? So can the Prime Minister explicitly now confirm his understanding of why the decision to overrule UK SB was made?
Mr. Speaker, I don't declare that the view of anyone about Peter Manson provides an explanation, not providing with the information. The recommendation was not granting security clearance. We're talking about a very serious issue and a very serious case. Clearly should be given that information. Whatever issues that are always there in government every day.
Robert Joe. The Prime Minister's aides brief that he's furious, angry, smart. The way that he ever seems to be angry, he's trying to say his own skin. Is he not angry about the 600 men crossing the English Channel on 4 boats on Saturday? Is he not angry about the people who are queuing up for fuel at forecourts and can't afford Chancellor's taxes? Isn't the truth his government is now so paralysed that its only agenda is cleaning up the mess left by the paedophiling pal, Peter Manson?
I think even if any government had been provided with this sort of information, rightly frustrated and angry.
Speaker, I would take a moment in a statement to focus on young men who were exploited, abused, raped by Jeffrey Epstein and friends. Years of being trafficked, raped, no one to turn to, and years of people not believing. The idea that Manson would call Epstein conviction wrongful is disgusting. I cannot imagine how it felt for survivors to hear that. Here his right to attack him, so I ask the Prime Minister to take the opportunity again to say to some women that this House believes them and this government stands by them, and is he confident that no person with financial or personal links with sex traffickers would receive a DV in future?
Can I direct focus on the victims in this, and that's where I started the statement by making it clear there was a judgment error on my part, and the apology I have made is to victims, because I know the impact this will have had on them who already suffered so very much.
It was an asked question. We don't believe received response. Was the Prime Minister aware that Peter Mandelson was a director of Systema before he was appointed?
Prime Minister. Mr. Act on the information was provided to me in the due diligence process. The information was dealt with in the security process and not been made available to me, nor can that detail be made available to me. Second, it should have made available to me.
Speaker, one of the things that I find most difficult to understand in this process is that when this scandal erupted in September of last year, and before the Prime Minister came to this place and elsewhere to make statements about it, statements that he must have known would have involved talking about vetting, why simply didn't order officials to share vetting with them? Why didn't he, and does he regret not doing it?
Well, I did ask Sir Wilmot carry out a review. I worked on the basis that all information would be shared with him. It was only last week that I found out from Sir Chris that he himself had not been provided the information he should be provided for when he was carrying out a review on my behalf.
Sir Colbert. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I take Prime Minister back to the question asked by the member for Hackney North and Stoke New England some while ago, which asked a quite simple question: why the Prime Minister didn't ask any questions whatsoever about the nature of the security clearing at Manson and the Chief, or why there were any doubt about him? Was he so obsessed with his determination to appoint this tinted figure to be ambassador to Washington, he wanted to ignore the rest, and the official just went along with it? Why didn't he ask the simple, straight question?
Mr. Speaker, Peter Mandelson gave us security clearance, and that was clear to everyone, including himself. He was given clearance, he was cleared, and he wouldn't have started the role if he hadn't been given clearance. As soon as it came to my attention last week that was against the recommendation of UKSB, I did ask for the information out before the House.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We all agree that Peter Mandelson should never have been appointed. The Prime Minister has said this clearly and consistently, taking responsibility, including by blood rising. That's the right thing to do. Can the Prime Minister give further assurance that the government will continue to comply with the humble dress in full?
Yes, I can give that assurance.
We got you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister said various things over the course of the last few weeks and months would have turned out to around the vetting process of Peter Mandelson. Does the Prime Minister accept inadvertently led to have comment?
I did not skip the House of Commons. I accept the information that I should have had, an information that the House should have had, should have been before the House. I did not sleep at the House, and that's why I've set up the account in full.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Bloomberg files, which called the Prime Minister to sack Peter Mandelson, revealed that Mandelson had been leaking confidential government information to a convicted paedophile during Gordon Brown's government. In his role as ambassador to Washington, there will have been acted as highly sensitive and top-secret documents. So, knowing that this was his previous behaviour, is there any investigation by the government or security services into potential leaks during Mandelson's tenure as ambassador?
That's why I have a review to be carried out in relation to cause any issues in national security.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the 12th of September, it was revealed in the newspaper that Mandelson did not pass vetting by ISIS and therefore by UKSB. On the 16th of September, in the chamber, my honourable friend, the member for Tiverton Minehead, made a statement in the presence of the Minister, the Right Honourable Member for Cardiff South and Canard. And here is information. Did the Minister or the Prime Minister feel the need to ask if the specific claim there was true? And in the response that was given, that DV clearance was granted by the SCO, the KC, how did he not see the clear difference between the question that was asked and the answer that was given? Does he not think that his own words, explanation bears belief?
Various questions were asked, and questions therefore put to the FCA. The answer that was the same because they took the view was not information could share with anyone, including himself.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Early day and TV release an interview with hospice worker Rachel Benedict, who's 22 years old, which became one of the victims of Jeffrey Epstein's abuse. For 27 years, she has been waiting for the crimes committed against her to be recognised, and that she told MC, and I quote, "Until we are heard, till sides are heard and believed, and I don't think there's ever going to be justice." Does the Prime Minister agree that we owe it to the criminals of victims like Rachel to put them first in these days, not put a report story, and that he was absolutely right to sack someone like Peter Mandelson, who refused to believe victims, and if he did not care?
Well, I do agree with him. Thank you for making sure the victims are central in this, as it should be.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister's been on his feet now for nearly 2 hours. So I put to him that the most charitable explanation can be put forward to explain this sorry saga is that it has been a bad, probably criminal case for 3 months. See no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil.
Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, set up the procedure in detail. Information would have been provided to me. It was not provided to me. If it had been provided, I would not allow Peter Mandelson to proceed in what they did.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As we've heard, it's absolutely staggering that vital information on UKSB recommendations be withheld from ministers taking decisions. Can the Prime Minister assure the House that in the review of his commission that we examine whether any other instances in which UKSB recommendations against granting DV status, whether there are any other instances of that over not just the period of this government, the last 14 years, because they have potential to have very serious security implications.
Well, I did not know the subject of the review, and that's why I put the review in place.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I speak to the Prime Minister that many of us in this House are totally scunnered political mess, but believe that's nothing compared to what I'm being told in the doors of Scotland by voters who feel that they expect and will need to expect more from Scotland after they were promised. We've focused on the process today. But the Prime Minister wouldn't have had come. He would have had to stand at the dispatch box, answer all these questions if he had not made the decision which he accepts was wrong to appoint Peter Mandelson to root the whole thing. So having accepted responsibility, what does the Prime Minister think consequence should be for that, and how do we restore faith?
Can I just tell the Prime Minister in the room, let's check out my what's that? Piece of paper, let's see the question, Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I fixed it on my behalf, but I would not provide with information. Had I been provided with it, I wouldn't be appointed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This morning, the Scottish Minister said that to deal with an unconventional US administration, he needs an unconventional ambassador. So, Prime Minister, does unconventional now mean appointing a man to a senior position and we know his lies, corruption and misconduct has provided corruption at the very heart of our democracy now? Can the Prime Minister tell us when he first knew with the evidence and the advice and why he not it?
Please, for the people.
I firstly lost Tuesday up to the House.
John Bell.
Third time for asking. At the time when the Prime Minister appointed Peter Mandelson as ambassador, was he aware that he had been a director of the system?
I was aware of what was in due diligence, and I've got that. I was aware of what issues that dealt with in the security vetting, more the recommendation you can see.
Thank you, Speaker. Madison's appointment was a huge failure of the British state, and I welcome the Prime Minister's hand in accepting responsibility for his part in it. Does the Prime Minister agree that restoring public trust is a massive task and requires leaders on all sides to be careful with their language and to ensure that they understand the process that they're talking about, rather than throw out baseless accusations of quote lying?
I do agree with that, Mr. Speaker.
John Robson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister has been absolutely clear that he should have been shown recommendation of UK security vetting. He knew he hadn't seen it, so why didn't he offer it?
Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, the first I knew that had been a recommendation to my appearance was Tuesday evening last week. The security clearance had been given by the Foreign Office if Peter Mandelson took up the post. As soon as he came to my attention, I saw the information up before the House today.
I'm going to take a bit of it and then I'm going to text you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of the public watching this matter would be baffled by the Commission who did what when. So I think the Prime Minister has come here us today. But no Prime Minister wants or should be in a situation like this, where government processes mean that critical information are not brought to the attention of ministers. So I welcome the review. But will the Prime Minister look at the wide relationship between government and systems so that trust can be restored?
Yes, well, look at that, but I do just want to say again, thousands of civil servants act of professional integrity every day on stage. This information should be brought to my attention. Had it been, the people would not be interested.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. During this session of Parliament, we have seen the head of the OER carry the can unsigned due to an error by a member of his team. What would it take for the Prime Minister to carry the can?
Mr. Speaker, I was provided information I should be provided with. Had been provided, I would make the decision. Was a deliberate decision. Was negligence, was a deliberate decision to tell me.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank the Prime Minister for the statement and thank you even more for the apologies on appointment of Mandelson. And being here today, I want to commit to the words once said to record of Virginia G. Frey. I felt particularly Reverend Peter Mandelson. She said, don't be fooled by those in Epstein's circle who say they didn't know what Epstein was doing. Anyone who spent a significant amount of time with him saw him touching girls. You wouldn't want a creepy old man touching your daughter. They even said they did not know he was raping children, but they were not blind. Now, on the House, across the House, this consensus. We need to get to the bottom of this absolutely, except the Prime Minister did not know about security vetting. Can the Prime Minister please update us when we have the next round of documents for a whole address so we can get to the bottom of who did know what and where?
Thank you for her campaign on behalf of the victims and other victims in relation to sexual abuse in particular, and her assistance always must put the victims first. We are applying with the humble address as quickly as possible. We will comply with it fully.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the Foreign Affairs Committee meeting back in November last year, I asked Oliver Robbins whether the Foreign Office had a different view about who should be recommended for the posting of ambassador. So Oliver Robbins said to me that the Prime Minister took advice and formed a view himself, and he then acted on that view. In the case, the Prime Minister was repeatedly warned before the appointment that Peter Mandelson carried reputational and political risk, including that due diligence was not exhaustive and vetting was not yet complete, and yet he chose to proceed regardless. And now the appointment of overriding civil service advice putting our national security at risk.
Mr. Speaker, we don't accept that there's any good reason why I can be provided with information that was withheld from me. Had it been provided to me, I wouldn't have proceeded with the appointment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I thank the Prime Minister for such a clean and comprehensive statement? I'm sure the whole House is grateful to him for doing so. Listening to part of the old adage about throwing stones and glass houses come to mind. I don't think there are enough glass houses in Scotland to replace the one that they are breaking today. However, Mr. Speaker, having set the record straight, does the Prime Minister agree to me that now is the time to return to the whole business of government to declare the country's peace and security?
Yes, I do agree that focus needs to be a fact where this war on the front and actually by which the government is agreeing.
The Prime Minister has told us that the Cabinet Secretary gave him bad advice, Peter Mandelson lied to him, and the Foreign Office didn't tell him anything. He's really in danger of being known as the mushroom Prime Minister. Kept in the dark, fed, I don't know if I say it,
But this is not that he wished to remain in the dark. He knew in September there was a security vetting, and yet he never asked about it until April of this year. Surely that's indicating that the site happened to be kept to talk about anyway.
Mr. Speaker, what I did was ask for the process to be reviewed, and Sir Chris will carry out that review, which I last week, the information with him in the review. So I asked the review, I did ask questions, he gave me his conclusions, but neither he knew nor I knew was that he too will not hold relevant material in the course of that review.
Mr. Speaker, and I welcome the Prime Minister's statement. I've here and I've listed one Conservative member after another, pushing us about standards of honesty and integrity. The Prime Minister remains where the same Conservatives who voted to change the rules on standards investigation in November 2021 just to get their colleague, Owen Patterson, on the hook. And can he remain whether or not the leader of the opposition chooses to abstain in that case?
Reasonable people of the. If the Prime Minister knew, and he inadvertently Parliament he should resign, he didn't know, and he's running competition of all one really should resign. And if he's allowed to yet again, then simply to follow and lacking basic curiosity to say the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister so detached from reality that he's only person who can see that.
The information we've had from me is without candidates conducting a committee review on my behalf. That came clearly out facts to the Parliament.
On the 4th of February, at column 780, my right honourable friend, the Leader of the Opposition, asked the Prime Minister, did the official security vetting that he received mention that Mandelson had an ongoing relationship with Jeffrey Epstein? Prime Minister, yes, it did. What on earth was it he received that he was talking about, which the right honourability referred to as the official security vetting? He said, yes, he received it.
The report.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a degree for the Prime Minister. I truly do, because he set out very succinctly how he followed the processes and procedures. But I remember that we talked a very embryonic age in our fashion, and if you become a client and there's something suspicious, then you contact the X9. As a member of the bank, his counsel, that would have been a trait that he was all too familiar with. So can the Prime Minister answer the basic question for the British public? Why didn't he take that basic step?
Developed by the Foreign Office before he cut post. It was only last Tuesday that they found out that was a recommendation of UPSC.
So where is it?
Time reported last week that you repeatedly sought assurance from the FEO that Peter Mandelson had passed security vetting. Is this correct? And when did you seek these assurances?
He got the clearance before he was as ambassador. That clearance was given by the Foreign Office. I found out against the recommendation on Tuesday last week.
Was the decision not to give Mandelson the head of security in FTO only to Ollie Wins? And secondly, what information to Prime Minister know after that campaign Mandelson and make change appointment process, quote, an appointment was be announced after security vetting is passed. So to meet the decision made, the Prime Minister did know that Peter Mandelson had failed the process. But what information did the Prime Minister know then that made him review the appointment process?
The decision to grant clearance was made by the CEO. After in September, it became clear to me due diligence that Peter Mandelson were not truthful. And that's why I set in place the best reviewed ideas and also changed the approach in relation to when vetting checks are carried out.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Is the Prime Minister really saying that in the appointment of Peter Mandelson, he didn't himself consider that there might be issues with his vetting process, given his track record? And isn't it even more credible that he then didn't query whether there had been any issues in that vetting process?
Matters was developing clearance before he took up his post as the ambassador. That was a decision taken by SEDO.
Tell the Prime Minister that this dispatch box in all house he had full confidence in his Mandelson. A man's relationship with Victor for Jeffrey Epstein was public knowledge. The Prime Minister knew and backed him away, and we claimed had no idea that his twice fired government minister had failed MI6 vetting, despite journalists fled directly to Downing Street the very same month. Mr. Speaker, we were that the Prime Minister appointed Mandelson, was stopped him, he appointed him, he defended him, and now claimed no nothing. He's exercising the nation. This cause this. The Prime Minister is a best fire. If he hadn't been seen
Order, leave. No, I'll end up and go my family. Leave, leave. You've been out there. Give me all the plate. I'll give it back very quick. Move before I did. I'll give you one option. Like that, you're not to smash your teeth for and control this up. Hold down. Don't feel no not. Right. I am Ursula, Minister. I bet you move at the name. The said member being suspended for the House. The question is, the Ursula in this House. All those in favour? Aye. I'm sorry, done this. I really am. Right.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 7 months ago, a national newspaper ran the story that Mandelson had failed security vetting. So how is it even possible that no one in number 10 knew until last week?
Inquiries were made, questions were asked of FCDO, and which they gave us the same. They did not disclose me or anyone in number 10, but UKSB had various recommended against clearance.
When the Prime Minister asked his officials in January 2025, as he surely did, perhaps with an element of surprise in his voice, so to actually pass his security clearance, what was the scenario that then unfolded? Did Darrell Leibovitz declare, I'm sorry, I can't tell you, Minister, I'm not at liberty today? Did he actively seek to mislead Prime Minister by simply saying, yes, Prime Minister? Or what seems more likely, did the scenario never take place, as the Prime Minister ever thought to?
Mr. Speaker, what happened in January was that vetting clearance was given by Foreign Office. That wasn't part of the matter. So last week, I found out the further second out us.
Speaker, in box notes of Prime Minister dated 11th November 2024, the former Cabinet Secretary Simon Case advised the Prime Minister that before appointing a political appointee, he would get security clearance before announcing. The Prime Minister ignored that advice. The Prime Minister's response in that box note is redacted. So I ask a very simple question. What was the answer on that box note? Will he publish what he said?
Mr. Speaker, I've made clear that my position was that the appointment was subject to development. I can't ill-consciously remember what exactly was in the paper. He's asked me we're the process subject to development. That I asked Chris Wilmot to look at the process and reference I made.
I'm running this 4 minutes. That's
He received the following to raise severe concerns regarding Madison's with China and due diligence report he received before the appointment was announced. The Prime Minister, however, sticks on side and that Madison is ambassador nonetheless. Given what due diligence exercised already flagged, it was sure predictable Madison would fail security vetting for the reason. But number 10 had already told Foreign Office before Sir Robin's proposed to see appointment, notwithstanding these issues, as exactly did by putting in place the safeguards. So how can this be made by a law and be served?
Prime Minister, if you did bring my attention, they should have brought my attention. Had he done so, I wouldn't have made one.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister said also what he knew about Sistema and Middleton. The Cabinet's due diligence report since the Prime Minister on the 11th of December 2024 said Mandelson served as a means to direct of Russian Sistema, which is the majority shareholder of TI, Defence Technology. Mandelson remained on board until June 2017 on to syndication in 2040. So will the Prime Minister finally confirm that he knew that Mandelson was a direct Sistema long after the invasion of Crimea, but appointed him anyway?
It's made clear, I did what with the due diligence report. I made clear that no time today, I've actually made clear this on previous occasions.
I can send you to speak that the Prime Minister is going to run a bus if he runs out of people to join them. And it shows this, but the Prime Minister has said that he will never turn on staff, and that he will never turn on staff. Well, Sue Ray scapegoated, and so Swarm of out more than Sweeney, and now Robin said the Prime Minister said that the bus stopped with him. This is his fault and the honourable thing. Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the information was withheld by me, from me by FCDO, and the circumstances out of the House.
My question to the Prime Minister is a straightforward one. Did Mr. Wayne, any of your officers, half of them know about this issue before last Thursday?
No.
Override the outcome of the vetting process, the SCDO must be in the possession of someone. Did you try and test the ambassador for harassment or behaviour, or premise the claims he said on a proper process? So whose idea was it, and who's playing pressure?
I just check the idea that any pressure is a good reason not to disclose to the Prime Minister that UKSV recommended against clearance for a very senior sensitive appointment. I accept that that's not a reason. What are the pressure?
The Minister is suggesting the idea Security Services concerned about the put out the booted weeks ago, the fact on the front page of the national newspaper in September. My issue is not about vetting, but we all know down at the Prime Minister sent to the thing, any day has been made aware, any element of Security Services raising concerns about appointment of Mandem.
No, to see. What I knew was security clearance given by Foreign Office, the way I've set out the House.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My constituents like Valley across Ireland across the UK will be discussing the event this time to time, discussing the issue which should have been to before the first time it came to press. Does the Prime Minister understand that every time we go through this, we destroy the reputation of this place, no matter who the government is, the party we can stand for that, and I know that this is not political. This is about protecting the reputation of this place being yourselves.
Minister. That's why I wanted to give the House all right information, which I've done this afternoon.
So we now establish that the Prime Minister did indeed know that Tim Mandelson had been the director of the scheme when he appointed him. Why on earth would the Prime Minister be so reckless that our national security would do that?
Speaker, I made it clear that I knew was in due diligence. Also made it clear that the CEO granted a security clearance before Madison took his oath.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The simple question that we still don't have an answer to. Did Peter Mandelson fail his expertise because of his relationship with Jerry Epstein? Was it some other reason as yet undisclosed?
Mr. Speaker, the information that's fed into the review and Reid's review is protected because our integrity, this is not a Peter Mandelson issue, the integrity process. What I don't say is that means I can't be bothered if the recommendation comes out of it.
Mr. Speaker, I wonder if the Prime Minister knew the difference between the diligence information from Cabinet Office and the security that had taken place when he appointed Peter Mandelson on the 18th of September.
I did know the difference.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. After years of legal conduct under the previous government, Prime Minister promised integrity and accountability. But my constituents in Stratford Devon are not seeing change. They are seeing more of the same, a continued government where warnings are ignored and standards safe. Why should anyone believe that he is still capable of delivering the change that promised?
Mr. Speaker, major inquiries made, so I put all picture for the House. That approach was taken as members seen this afternoon.
Mr. Speaker, this is humiliating day for the Prime Minister and without and the whole country. And yet, even still, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister being open with he's relying on some inquiry where the Cabinet Secretary told him in writing in the official that he must seek a vetting prior to the appointment of political appointee. That's true, isn't it, Prime Minister? Can you give straight to such performance?
The process was subject to vetting checking carried out. Had been made aware of the recommendation of UKSV. I would have made the appointment. What I did after the end was to look back at the process, which did according to my reference to some case. He assured me the process been carried out properly.
Mr. Speaker, if Courtney Robins could and should have provided this information to the Prime Minister the first opportunity, but as he said today, all his same price capital and Antonio Romeo, Cabinet Office officials sat on the information nearly a month before bringing it to Prime Minister when Guardian
start asking questions around 10. So surely, if he wanted to accept, they need legal advice to do what he's saying, should have obviously backed what he was, bring him information immediately. Why is this
Speaker, they acted entirely appropriately. They came across the emotions as part of the humble dress exercise, and they took legal advice on what could be disclosed to and discussed it with me, so they got legal advice. That's the right to do.
Speaker, on the 4th of February, it was notified by the Women's Interchange for the FCDA that requires strapable access in addition to TV. Started the role on 10 February. On what date did Anderson receive strapable access?
I don't know some date, but I'll definitely out.
To speak, given what the annoying Peter Mandelson was and maintain the friendship that can be effective, saying links in both China and Russia in terms of business from two government goals. What I really want to ask Prime Minister is this: what are the unique defining human qualities of the man just described that is to you that should be politically appointed to the US ambassador? And why now is she still defending them from process and that they're calling out what's wrong and taking responsibility and resigning?
I'm not stepping behind process, I'm stepping out the process of the House.
Mr. Speaker, custodiate ipsos fides, promising those who regard the gods themselves with that in mind and holding those in power to account, can't explain why to more than a week or almost a week into this House when the public will be expecting months of much sooner.
Prime Minister, I become one who took a decision based upon the and doubts and second to account the House, which was done this afternoon.
Mr. Speaker, this House and country is being asked to believe that though he is the Prime Minister, making the most critical diplomatic appointment the United Kingdom can make, that he, the Prime Minister, in the midst of the raging controversy of the Deputy, never asked if his nominee had been security vetted. Isn't it that staggering and incredible? When it comes to our national security advisor, does he know? Does he know that?
The attention on the process began very much September 25 when Bloomberg emails were published. That's when I agreed with the Cabinet Secretary carry out a review of the entire process, and I set out length this afternoon.
David Reid. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister disclosed the blame as officials for this article. So can you confirm that you know the names of FCDOs or servers that made the SIM over by UKFB on 20th January 2025, yes or no? And has made a decision to spend all from duty pending a full independent inquiry, yes or no?
Mr. Speaker, I set out the facts of the House this afternoon. I have heard a review by Secretary Alford of security vetting, so if any such needed, we can put in place.
Speaker, a stand-up to Mandelson vetting clearance was conditional on him being accompanied to meetings with former clients such as Palantir. Will the Prime Minister clarify why there is no record of his and Peter Mandelson's meeting with Palantir in Washington, and will tell House what it was all about?
Mr. Speaker, the routine meeting and cover visit I was on in the US.
The Prime Minister is being telling us that he was not told or he was allowed to be told. But what culture has the Prime Minister created around him and the civil service that no one felt that they could, should tell him this kind of information?
I remind him that the last was seen for a this item, which is what they have. And for the Guardian, they brought to my attention on Tuesday evening. This is what led to ask for the Christian state to House.
Wants to end chaos and to restore honesty and integrity to government. Does he think that a man who called a convicted child sex offender for power and whose connections with SC already well know is consistent with that promise? And if it is, will he step aside and let Mel end his chaos and restore honesty and integrity to government?
Mr. Speaker, I accept that I would narrowly apologise the victims as I must have decided.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On 4th of February, my friendly opposition asked the Prime Minister whether the vetting process is closed information about Pepsi. The Prime Minister answered, yes, it is. In his response to my friend, the refused for his request, he said, I'm confused between vetting and disclosure. Then in the answer to my friend, the honourable member of South Africa, he said, new difference. If that's what misleading a House, what is?
Well, part of the vetting process, the due diligence is part of that process, and rather than, as it were, sort of technicality, I think the House, the information that I had about what I knew from the due diligence, it was clear the leader of the person was asking. It was FC. I knew that was a due process, due diligence, and that's what I told House about it.
Prime Minister promised that unlike the Tories, his government would govern well to stop public trust. Yet this also Madison saga has reinforced a brief video on beyond that no government or politician can change. And the Prime Minister is saying my constituents why he lead the then Cabinet Secretary's advice to get security clearance before confirming Harrison as ambassador.
Mr. Speaker, I've dealt with this on a number of occasions.
Right, that could be a number of questions. We'll let them change about.
Before I call the Minister to make a statement on recent anti-Semitic attacks, I should inform the House that in some cases charges have been brought, and those cases, including the attack on the Hassler Community Ambulance Service at Atlanta Synagogue, therefore to be detained. With respect to more recent incidents in Benton and in Finchley, arrests being made, charges not yet brought. I remind honourable members that they should not refer to details of any specific cases currently before courts, and they should exercise caution with respect to any specific cases that might subsequently come before court, in order not to prejudice those proceedings. We have been there in the past.
Madam Deputy Speaker, with permission, I will make a statement about the appalling incidents of recent days targeting issues and opponents of the Iranian regime. We'll begin with the facts. Counter-terrorism policing have confirmed that they are investigating a series of arson attacks and incidents that occurred in London over recent days. These include an arson attack at the synagogue in Finchley on Wednesday the 5th of April, a suspected attack targeting a premises in Hendon linked to a Jewish charity on Friday the 17th of April, a suspected arson attack targeting a synagogue in Harrow on the evening of Saturday the 18th of April, a further incident in the early hours of yesterday morning outside a residential premises in Finchley and opposite a synagogue. These events follow the arson attack on a volunteer-led ambulance service run by the Jewish community in Golders Green on the 23rd of March. And last week, there was also an attempted arson attack on a Persian language media organisation that has previously been the target of serious arrests linked to the Iranian regime and their proxies. 8 arrests have now been made in connection with that incident, and 4 people have been charged. Now, Madam Speaker, Jewish communities across the UK will be distressed and dismayed by these abhorrent attacks. And I know that I speak for members right across this House when I say there is no place in British life for anti-Semitism. Attacks on British Jews are an attack on all of us. We will do whatever it takes to stop the cowards and the thugs who seek to intimidate our Jewish communities. Now, police response over the weekend has been decisive. 15 arrests have already been made. In addition, a range of capabilities have deployed to deter potential attackers and to reassure communities. Over the weekend, the Metropolitan Police significantly increased the number of officers in and around North West London. Uniformed and plain-clothed officers have maintained a strong presence around Barnet, and additional stop and search powers have been introduced across the borough. Response vehicles and counter-terrorism police resources have been employed alongside local policing to respond to potential threats. Now, to ensure the police response is a sustainable one, the Government has already committed an additional £5 million for this financial year to support the deployment of specialist officers across the country to support vulnerable communities under Project Servitor. That is in addition to the record £73.4 million and funding for protective security, Jewish, Muslim and other faith sites. This morning, I visited Future Reform Synagogue with the Deputy Commissioner, a local MP, member of the House. Community leaders saw firsthand the strengthened police presence and the resilience of those affected. I reaffirmed our commitment to protect all those who have been targeted. The government's commitment to supporting British Jews is an enduring one. We're taking firm steps to root out anti-Semitism where it appears across public life, our public services, to our universities, to charities and beyond. We're picking up our words with action. This includes launching an urgent review of anti-Semitism within the NHS, introducing mandatory training and investing £7 to anti-Semitism in schools, colleges and universities. This is a whole of society effort grounded in close engagement with Jewish communities. We are determined to tackle the issues that have a daily impact on the lives of our Jewish communities. An amendment to existing powers will allow the police to deal with repeat protests by taking into account the cumulative effect of protest activity. And the Home Secretary, Lord MacDonald, will take a review of public order laws to ensure people can go about their lives without fear of intimidation. The Government has also set out its vision for a fair, tolerant and decent country, the real public issue of protecting what matters. Our action plan to tackle threats to social cohesion and counter the scourge of extremism. The plan makes significant spending commitments, including £800 million to expand the Biden Plus programme to 40 new neighbourhoods, plus new investment in community resilience, schools linking and local need. This vital effort requires it to work collectively across government and with professional partners and will be driven forward by my right honourable friend, the Community Secretary. Furthermore, we are actively protecting Persian
Good morning. The 79th plenary meeting of the General Assembly is called to order. The Assembly will resume its consideration of Agenda Item 64 entitled Use of the Veto to hold a debate pursuant to Resolution 76/262 of April 26, 2022 on the situation as to which the veto was cast by 2 permanent members at the 10,130th meeting of the Security Council on April 7, 2026 under the agenda item titled Situation in the Middle East. The quotation under the item is listed in the Journal of the United Nations. I will now make a statement as the President of the General Assembly. Excellencies, thank you for joining this 21st meeting of the Veto Initiative, convened on Tuesday in response to vetoes cast on draft resolution of the Security Council on April 7th, pertaining to the trade of Hormuz. The veto initiative was established in 2022 to increase accountability around glaring issues of the veto and, by extension, the inability of the Security Council to fulfill its core responsibility to maintain international peace and security. Today's meeting is a direct reflection of their mandate. In light of the Council's failure to support efforts needed to save and unimpeded the Strait of Hormuz, the General Assembly now has both the opportunity and the responsibility to ensure the debate on the freedom of navigation Strait of Hormuz does not end with the casting of a veto. Member States likewise have the opportunity to speak out the ongoing conflict and the situation in the Middle East more broadly, to hold the Security Council accountable, and, importantly, to remind all parties involved of their obligations under the US Charter and international law. Because every resolution not passed in the name of peace and security, every violation of international law carries real consequences for people on the ground and for countries and communities affected. And as the past weeks have made clear, in our interconnected world, there is nothing theoretical about compliance with international law. What unfolds in one region echoes across all others, with deep and multi-sister consequences everywhere. Oil prices have surged by more than 40%, rising to around $100 per barrel, with spikes of $110. Disruptions linked to conflict have removed up to 1.5 million barrels per day from global supply, by a sharp increase in fuel transport and broader trade costs. The disruption of fertilizers has exacerbated food insecurity for millions of vulnerable people. The IMF cut its growth outlook for 2026, noting the threat of global recession. Economic repercussions felt everywhere. For example, by way of New Zealand, where airlines have been forced to shift services, and the Philippines, where it even declared an energy emergency. It will lead to resolute focus on the Strait of Hormuz. What we are witnessing is not a single crisis, but the convergence of multiple overlapping and long-standing fault lines, which did not start the 28th of February. It includes attacks against civilian and commercial infrastructure, from oil and energy systems to airports, vessels, and shipping containers, to most shockingly schools and communities. Attacks that are prohibited under international humanitarian law, which protects civilians. It includes tensions over Iran's nuclear and ballistic missile programs. It includes grave human rights violations, most notably the killing of thousands of peaceful protesters in Iran. It includes persistent threats, including attacks against Israel. It includes deaths of thousands of civilians, including children, in Iran and Lebanon, as well as missile attacks and casualties across the region, in Bahrain, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates, Jordan, and Iraq. It includes the diversion of international attention from the ongoing catastrophic humanitarian situation in Gaza, and the need to fully implement Security Council Resolution 2803. As well from negative development in the West Bank, where we continue to see intensified set of violence against Palestinians and the expansion of illegal settlements by Israel. To catch together the excellencies, these realities cannot be ignored, can they be separated? They form the broad context within which this current crisis is unfolding. Now more than ever, dear colleagues, there is a need to refocus our efforts on diplomacy, on negotiations, and on the peaceful settlement of all disputes in the Middle East, in full accordance with the UN Charter and international law. It's there for a reason. In this regard, I commend all parties who have continued to pursue diplomatic solutions, including those efforts that have had to broker the initial ceasefire between the United States and Iran, which must be respected by all parties and extended throughout the region, including Lebanon. Indeed, if the Security Council is unable or unwilling to fulfill the Charter responsibility of maintenance of international peace and security, then the General Assembly asks you to step forward. We must then move from debate to action. I therefore encourage all member states to put forward concrete, forward-looking solutions, including draft solutions, and help move beyond current impasses, not only with regard to the Strait of Hormuz, but across the region as a whole. Knowing what a difficult, fragmented time we live in, and fully aware of what might come, we should not reduce diplomatic engagement, but rather seize the opportunity to build on the initial fragile ceasefire, including through the efforts of the newly appointed person and one of the Secretary General on the Middle East. History has shown us time and again that pursuing diplomacy and upholding international law remain the only viable path to peace, security, and the protection of civilians' humanity, no matter how hard it may seem. And as said in the beginning, in an interconnected world, it is in the interest of all of us to stand up and protect the international rules-based order, as the consequences of a crisis anywhere, if it does everywhere. I thank you. Before proceeding further, I wish to call my letter on time management has been circulated to delegations on January 6, 2026. In this debate, speakers are encouraged to adhere to the time limit of 7 minutes for submission on behalf of a group of states and 5 minutes for delegations speaking in national capacity. To assist delegations managing the time, a countdown clock will be displayed on the screen. I thank you for your cooperation. As the first speaker, I now the floor to the distinguished representative of the Russian Federation, followed by China.
Госпожа председатель, 7 апреля Российская Федерация проголосовала против внесенного Бахрейном и Иорданией, Катар, Кувейтом, Объединенными Арабскими Эмиратами и Саудовской Аравией проекта резолюции Верховного Совета. В первую очередь, хочу напомнить о принципиальной позиции России в отношении к нам
of United States released to Iran was unleashed in violation of the UN and other norms of international law and would result in a large number of victims, including among civilians. We are committed to self-territorial integrity of all well-accepted states of origin of Iran and the Arabian Islam monarchies. For this reason, we consider the strike against civilians and civilian infrastructure unacceptable. The leadership of the country of the most active efforts possible with you to prevent them. However, some members of the Security Council prefer to turn a blind eye to the root cause of escalation tensions. Unfortunately, this is one of the key shortcomings of the earlier Security Council resolution number 2017. Nonetheless, we understand concern all its members of the GCC countries obtained during that vote. However, in the non-clerical resolution on maritime security, at least we are seeing today, not only was broad context of the conflict more, in it, the Security Council was being invited to give green light to use of protection measures under pretext of ensuring safety navigation. This would become a blunt for the use of corrective action and for escalation. The removal of references to Chapter 7 of the Charter and to amending of all necessary measures did not solve the problem. In addition to this, essentially every paragraph of the draft resolution was replete with connotational, actually incorrect elements, just failed so far. The detailed statement when made in the explanation of the vote on the 7th of April. The adoption of the document would also create an additional pretext for residents who are already affecting non-civilian infrastructure and civilians in Muslim states, showing the possibility of using force the basis of legal criteria, accompanied by intention to create the important Iran as sole source of rights to national security. Ample room for interpretation by some states and legitimacy of the intersections. In various past, we've already seen such example, and everyone can recall the monstrous consequence for the interpretation of Security Council Resolution 1973 on the day of 10.11 Russia could not allow the Security Council to sign up to the legitimization of question. This reason was the entire negotiating process up to the very last moment. We have called out Africans to refrain from advancing this resolution. Unfortunately, our primary colleagues and their like-minded partners nevertheless did bring them out to a vote. That situation we had no choice but to oppose adoption. Acted in similar manner. The events followed can confirm that our countries are responsible from members of the Security Council to the right soon, especially under the vote on the table. The implementation of the ceasefire regime in the United States and Iran was adopted. On the 11th of April, Islamabad, red talks were held between the High Level Meccan and Iranian representative. We are convinced that protection united building steps when this very made it possible to safeguard the condition of achieve the first all minimum very fragile agreements as well as long implementing process with comments. This is as Russian freedom stands for ensuring freedom of navigation, not only in trade for movement and waters, but throughout world. We say it's necessary to seek an end to attacks on commercial fleet of 80 states, as well as owning corridor Cuba and Venezuela. This problem must be addressed in a cooperative manner with participation of all interested states. We are convinced that such an approach should be fully applied to current situation in the Middle East as well, resulting in the problem of trade of Hormuz aggravated by the escalated steps of the American leadership to block maritime communication with Iranian ports. It is impossible with eliminating the root cause of the current crisis without taking into account the opinion of Tehran. At the same time, just being concerned about our friends in Russia and China put forward an alternative draft council resolution of the current situation in the Middle East, including the context of maritime security. This is drafted in a concise and balanced manner and aimed facilitating search for negotiated solution, which is currently being pursued to the existence of a number of increasingly past time. The document is currently in blue, a Security Council table. We believe at the present moment the Council should focus precisely on such objective issues that are consistent with stand to maintain international peace, security, and count on the support of full members of the Security Council. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Russian Federation. I now the floor to the representative of China, followed by Kuwait and the Union.
Madam President, April 7th, China, along with Russia, voted against a draft resolution on the issue of the Strait of Hormuz at the Security Council. As a member of the Security Council, China approaches every vote in the Council with a serious, conscientious, and responsible attitude, and always determines its voting position based on the merit of the issue itself, and on whether the adoption of a resolution would genuinely contribute to resolving the issue and achieving peace. China has great interest to the draft resolution amid the brain on behalf of the Gulf states, fully understand their major concerns. At the same time, the Council sections should aim at de-escalation. They must not provide a veneer of legitimacy for authorized military operations, or grant a license to use of force to allow further exacerbate tension and add fuel to the fire there believed in escalation of conflict. In exercising its veto on this draft resolution, China upheld international fairness and justice, given the purposes of the impact, prevented conflict from extending further and the situation from escalating further, and created favorable conditions for giving a temporary ceasefire long in dialogue and negotiation. China's vote represents a voice responsible for peace and for the people of the region. It stands on the right side of history, and both stand the test of history. President, China does not go along with Iran's attacks on Gulf states, and I believe that the passage and safety of a strait used for international navigation should be safeguarded. We call Iran to take proactive action to support normal navigation in the Strait of Hormuz early days. Meanwhile, the U.S.'s right up to deployment and targeted blockade constitute a dangerous and irresponsible move. This navigation in the Strait of Hormuz is a spillover effect of the conflict in Iran. Only a complete ceasefire and thematic conditions for easing the situation. China welcomes the investment by relevant parties that a ceasefire agreement has been reached to support efforts conducive to ending conflict. The U.S. negotiation in talks is in right direction toward de-escalation. The current situation has reached a critical juncture between war and peace, and which opportunity of peace is opening. Pressing priority is to prevent by all means a lapse fighting to maintain the momentum of the ceasefire negotiation, the outcomes. This serves the fundamental interests of the people in the region and meets the shared aspirations of the international community. The relevant parties should adhere to the ceasefire agreement, stick to the direction along peace law, stay committed to resolving disputes through political diplomatic means, and take concrete actions to ease regional tension. The international community should continue to intensify efforts to promote talks for peace and quickly oppose any actions that undermine ceasefire or escalate confrontation. All parties should also honestly respect upon sovereignty, security, and territorial integrity and prevent escalation to Lebanon for effective ceasefire agreement. President, as a sincere and strategic partner of countries in the Middle East, China is following closely the regional situation, upholding an objective and impartial position, as being engaged in intensive mediation with party active to promote talks for peace. Recent President Xi Jinping solemnly put forward 4 propositions on safeguarding and promoting peace and stability in the Middle East, namely, staying committed to the principle of peaceful existence, staying committed to the principle of national sovereignty, staying committed to the principle of international law, and staying committed to a balanced approach to government and security. This demonstration is a citizen position to efforts promote peace and conflict and advocate for dialogue with our friends. It offers Chinese approach to resolving crisis and ending conflict. Guided by access of Xi Jinping's 4 propositions, China stands ready to continue to facilitate escalation, promote relations on regional interests, and ready to clearly ultimately achieve the enduring sensibility in the midst. Thank you, President.
I thank the distinguished representative of China and now give floor to the distinguished representative of Kuwait, also on behalf of a range of Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates.
In the name of the merciful, compassionate, Mr. President, on behalf of the Kingdom of Bahrain, the United Arab Emirates, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the State of Qatar, the Hamid Kingdom of Jordan, ING, State of Kuwait, we express our appreciation for holding this meeting pursuant to General Assembly Resolution 76/262, following the initiative led by the China support from states. This initiative reflects the commitment of the international community to transparency and accountability when the Security Council is able to discharge its responsibilities due to the use of veto. Madam President, the draft resolution on securing maritime navigation in the Strait of Hormuz was tabled on the 7th of April 2026 as part of a responsible and purposeful collective action aimed at addressing clear and direct threats to international peace and security, and aimed at safeguarding the freedom of maritime navigation as a shared international interest. This endeavor reflected our country's commitment to act within relevant multilateral frameworks, foremost among the Security Council, in order for the Council to fulfill its core responsibility in confronting such threats as unjustified and unlawful practice that target the stability of the region and global economy. The Kingdom of Bahrain, its capacity as a holder, made diligent effort during extensive consultations with members of the Security Council that lasted nearly 3 weeks to reach a balanced text that takes into account all concerns, in particular those of countries of the region. These efforts included extensive consultations and circulation of 6 successive versions of the draft resolution. The vote was postponed more than one occasion in order to ensure the unity of the Council on the important matter. Several proposals were able to find common ground. Nevertheless, the Security Council was able to discharge its responsibility and adopt the draft resolution. Displayed the gravity of the existing threat and stark impact on international peace and security. Madam President, through the Security Council Resolution 2017, which was co-sponsored by 136 states, the international community adopted obligations that are not subject to such interpretations or selective implementation. Any failure to implement these obligations or any laxity in enforcing them encourages further violations in blatant defiance of this consensus, and this would be a real test of credibility of the international system. Illegal measures taken in Iran is Strait of Hormuz have constituted a direct threat to the security and safety of supply chains. When international maritime routes are threatened, the entire world is affected by the repercussions. It impacts the lives of millions in the region and around the world. And it is the global south that bears the greatest burden of such crises. The World Food Programme has estimated that continued disruptions could push to 55 million additional people into acute food insecurity. This is not a new matter. This is a pattern of behavior to be seen before. Security Council Resolution 552 of 1984 expressed international concern regarding such crisis. Madam President, these attacks by the Islamic Republic of Iran have not only targeted shipping lanes, but also affected civilian cities and critical infrastructure, a clear and blatant violation of international law and international humanitarian law, as well as the rules of freedom of navigation enshrined in the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. Such practices cannot justify under any pretext. They are imprescriptible. Rather, they require a firm and responsible international stance. This collective action led as a response to grave developments that created a direct threat to freedom of maritime navigation, affected the safety and stability of international trade, energy markets, and the supply of food and medicine. The resolution also aimed to consolidate relevant principles of international law and freedom of navigation, and to ensure to trade are not used as tools of pressure, extortion. The failure by the Security Council to adopt it does absolve any party of responsibility. It does send an erroneous message to the people of the world that threats to international waterways can occur without a firm collective response by the internal body responsible for the maintenance of international peace and security. Madam President, the Gulf region is not distant from the country of the world, rather it lays at the heart of the global economic stability. Security is an integral part of the security of all states. Its stability is a cornerstone of prosperity for the world as a whole. We are aware of the seriousness of existing threats, and we are committed to safeguarding maritime security and ensuring the continuity of international trade. Our countries therefore wish to announce intention collectively to continue working and coordinating closely with member states with a view to submitting a new draft resolution aimed at securing the freedom of maritime navigation. This effort will be based on a comprehensive, consultative approach that takes into account all concerns, thereby enhancing prospects of achieving broad international consensus and reaffirming the principles of international law applicable to strays used for international navigation in order to protect freedom of navigation, safeguard maritime security, and ensure full compliance with Security Council resolutions 552 and 2817. At the same time, we affirm that the right of our countries to defend their security and sovereignty remain guaranteed under Article 15 of the Charter of the United Nations. To address any ongoing threats, President, the credibility of the international system is measured by its unity and its ability to implement its solution on the ground. Today, that credibility stands before a real test. We will continue to uphold our responsibility alongside all those who believe in international law and the right to people's security, stability, and the love of dignity. I thank you, Madam President.
Thank the distinguished representative of Kuwait on behalf of Bahrain, Jordan, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates. I now the floor to the distinguished representative of the European Union on behalf of the EU and its member states, followed by Singapore and Iceland.
Thank you, Madam President. I have the honor to speak on behalf of the European Union. The candidate countries North Macedonia, Montenegro, Albania, Ukraine, the Republic of Moldova, and Herzegovina, as well as Andorra and Macedon, themselves with this statement. We regret that despite intense negotiations, the draft resolution proposed by Bahrain, on behalf of Bahrain, Kuwait, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Jordan, could not be adopted because of the veto exercised by two permanent members of the Security Council, the body bearing the primary responsibility for maintaining peace and security. Freedom of navigation and maritime security in the Strait of Hormuz, one of those critical maritime routes, are essential for the stability of the Middle East, for global trade, for energy and food security, and for other critical supply chains. As we're witnessing today, government small funding carries far-reaching consequences as the security, economic, and humanitarian aspects of the crisis spill far beyond the core region. For example, since the onset of the escalation, fertilizer prices increased by 35% in Latin America and Caribbean. Global urea prices are up 50%, just as Asia enters its rice planting season. This threatens to reduce harvests slowly and could drive up to 45 million additional people, as the previous statement indicated, into acute hunger during 2026. This is a global crisis and most significant humanitarian supply chain problem since COVID, comparable to the shock caused by Russia's blockade of the Black Sea and subsequent crises. Any act that threatens safe and free navigation through the Strait of Hormuz is unacceptable. Maritime security, freedom of navigation, and the right of free passage through international straits must be respected in line with international law as reflected in the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. It cannot be conditioned by individual states. The European Union welcomes the ceasefire agreement with the United States and Iran and urges for de-escalation and continued dialogue and full respect of international law by all parties, including the principles of the United Nations Charter and international humanitarian law. We commend Pakistan and other regional partners for their efforts and mediation of credible this outcome. Madam President, we welcome increased coordination among partners to ensure freedom of navigation in the Strait of Hormuz to consider appropriate measures once the conditions are met. We also welcome the Secretary General's personal engagement in addressing this crisis, including the appointment of Jean Arnaud as personal envoy for the Middle East and extra full support for his mandate. As well as the UN task force set up by we aim to develop mechanisms designed to meet humanitarian needs in the Strait of Hormuz. We urge all involved to fully respect the ceasefire across the region, including in Lebanon, cease all military operations, and fully ensure freedom of navigation in line with international law, with special urgency on the passage of humanitarian goods. UNSC Resolution 2017 to be fully implemented. All parties must comply with international humanitarian law and protect civilians and civilian infrastructure, UN peacekeepers, and humanitarian personnel. In this context, we further call for an urgent cessation of hostilities in Lebanon, which should take a heavy toll on civilians. We hope the first bilateral meeting days between Israel and Lebanon may pave the way to a lasting peace between the two countries. To conclude, Madam President, the European Union will continue to engage with partners in the region to contribute to de-escalation and regional stability. Diplomacy is key to resolving all outstanding issues. The European Union's representative Alas visited the Gulf countries last week, while the President of the European Council Costa concluded his visit to the Gulf region yesterday. Parties should continue engaging in good faith in efforts to reach sustainable agreement on all areas of concern. We stand ready to contribute to all diplomatic efforts in coordination with partners to reduce tensions and bring about a lasting solution to end hostilities, prevent Iran from acquiring a nuclear weapon, and put an end to Iran's destabilizing activities, including its ballistic missile program. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank the distinguished representative of the European Union on behalf of the EU and its member states. Now the floor to the distinguished representative of Singapore, also on behalf of Malta and Jamaica.
Madam President, it's my honor to deliver the following statement on behalf of Fiji, Jamaica, Malta, and my own country, Singapore. Our four countries contributed actively to the negotiation, drafting, and conclusion of the United Nations Convention on Law of the Sea, or UNCLOS. We remain steadfast to the spirit of the Convention, committed to upholding a legal framework within which all activities in the oceans and seas must be carried out. For small states, international rule of law is a matter of society. We therefore have an abiding interest in the faithful implementation of UNCLOS as a constitution for the oceans and in reaffirming its universal and unified character. Madam President, at the outset, we wish to express our gratitude to you for convening the debate on the use of veto. the membership gathered today because the veto was exercised to block a draft resolution concerning the Strait of Hormuz. We are disappointed that there has been no agreement on the adoption of the draft resolution, which would have referred that all ships, aircraft enjoy the right of trans passage through the strait, which has not been impeded in accordance with international law as reflected in UNCLOS. The Strait of Hormuz is a strait used for international navigation, through which the right of transit passage applies under UNCLOS. This right is also firmly entrenched in customary international law, and is therefore binding on all states, regardless of whether they are parties to UNCLOS. Transit passage applies during peacetime and war. This right is not contingent on any license or levy. It is an inherent right of ships and aircraft to traverse without prior authorization, as reflected in Article 44 of UNCLOS. Though it is unequivocal that states bordering such states should not hamper or suspend transit passage, there are no exceptions to this inherent right. The right of unimpeded passage has been and continues to be of fundamental importance to international maritime trade, where transit passage is consequences reverberate across the global economy through energy markets, supply chains, and increased freight costs. For many small island nations and developing states with import-dependent economies, such disruptions have severe impacts on economic resilience and energy security. It is the collective interest of the international community to ensure respect for and uphold the right of unimpeded transit passage in the Strait of Hormuz, as well as in all other trade used for international navigation. When President, the current situation in the Strait of Hormuz, where transit passage has been impeded, is of great concern. We call on all concerned parties to uphold and respect the right of transit passage, comply with all other applicable obligations under international law, restore safe and unimpeded transit passage in the Strait of Hormuz, and ensure the safety of seafarers' ships. Madam President, please allow me to also make some additional remarks in national capacity. Singapore had welcomed the announcement of overseas in the Middle East on the 8th of April 2026. We are encouraged by the steps towards de-escalation, and commend the efforts of the mediators, in particular Pakistan, urge the United States of America and the Islamic Republic of Iran to continue down the path of dialogue and redouble effort in negotiation that will lead to the permanent end to the conflict, lasting peace and stability in the region. Safe and unimpeded passage through the Strait of Hormuz, in accordance with the international law and UNCLOS, must be restored. The safety of seafarers and ships must be ensured, and Singapore also endorses the statement to be made later by the Philippines on behalf of ASEAN. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Singapore, on behalf of Malta and Jamaica. I now refer to the distinguished representative of Ireland, on behalf of Finland and Norway, followed by the Philippines and Liechtenstein.
Madam President, I am the only speaker on behalf of Finland, Norway, and Iceland. First, allow me to pay tribute to the originators of General Assembly Resolution 76262. The resolution is through itself an effective tool for holding to account permanent members of the Security Council in all circumstances with the votes used. The Security Council's primary responsibility for the maintenance of international peace and security. To carry out its duties on behalf of the entire membership, it is entirely right and proper that Permanent 5 explain the use of veto and constitute failure of the Council to act in cause of peace and security. We also remain supportive of the General Assembly considering its own role in situations where Council is unable to act. The passing of the veto by China and the Russian Federation Council meeting April 7th prevented the Council once again from taking considered and decisive action to re-establish peace and security. The resolution aims to address key aspects of the conflict in the region, namely the reduction of global problems in the shape of the Strait of Hormuz, as well as international humane and responsible before parts to refrain from further escalation and cease all attacks against civilian infrastructure compliance with international law. Freedom of navigation is the cornerstone of the law of the sea and must be upheld. The failure to resolve issues risks massive damage to the global economy and severe impact on millions of ordinary people, particularly countries already in a situation of food insecurity. We thank Bahrain and other GCC countries for their attempt to bring all member states on board. The resolution went through a number of iterations, and with an internal iteration limited to purity and symmetry and designed to prevent escalation. The failure of the Council to respond to risks widening further the credibility gap when it comes to the Council's role in peace and security. The Veto's House last week banned the further development of Resolution 2870, in which the Council condemned any actions or threats aimed at opposing, obstructing, or otherwise interfering with the international navigation through the Strait of Hormuz. This resolution was adopted by a rapid number and the 22 member states, including our countries. Madam President, with conflicts escalating in the Middle East region and elsewhere, seeing devastating humanitarian consequences for millions, the Security Council must turn a new page. The Security Council needs to be a forum in which tough decisions are resolved, not simply showcased. We support the UN leadership through the Council and by Secretary General. Thank you.
Thank the distinguished representative of Iceland on behalf of Finland and Norway. I now refer to the distinguished representative of the Philippines on behalf of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations.
Thank you, Madam President. I have the honor to deliver this statement on behalf of the 11 member states of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations: Brunei Darussalam, Cambodia, Indonesia, the Lao People's Democratic Republic, Malaysia, Myanmar, Singapore, Thailand, Timor-Leste, Vietnam, and own country, the Philippines. ASEAN expresses deep concern over the development in the Middle East and their implications for regional and global peace and stability. The ASEAN Foreign Minister Statement of 13 April 2026 on developments in the Middle East we welcome the announcement of two ceasefire between the United States of America and the Islamic Republic of Iran, 8 April 2026, and underscore the importance of its full and active implementation. We reaffirm the importance of maintaining maritime safety and security and holding freedom of navigation in and above strips used for international navigation, in accordance with international law, including the 1982 UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, and relevant standards and recommended practices by the International Civil Aviation Organization and the International Maritime Organization. In this regard, call for restoration of the safe, impeded, and continuous transit passage of vessels and aircraft in the Strait of Hormuz in line with the 1982 UN Convention on the Law of the Sea. as well as all parties to ensure the safety of seafarers and ships in accordance with the International Convention for the Safety of the Sea. We urge the United States of America and the Islamic Republic of Iran to continue negotiations that will lead to permanent end of the conflict and lasting peace and stability in the region. We commend the efforts of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan and all parties involved with collaborative efforts to this regard. Call for the full and effective implementation of the ceasefire, aimed at preventing further suffering and loss of lives, ensure maritime security and freedom of navigation and oversight, especially for merchant, non-combatant vessels and aircraft in accordance with the 1982 UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, minimize the disruption of the flow of energy and essential goods, and mitigate its adverse impact on local economic stability. Urge all parties involved to maintain conducive conditions for the full and effective implementation of these ceasefire, exercising utmost restraint, ceasing all hostilities, acting responsibly, avoiding any acts that may aggravate the wish, and working collectively toward comprehensive and enduring resolution in accordance with international law, United Nations Charter, and relevant UN Security Council resolutions. Underscore the importance of maintaining regional peace, stability, and prosperity, upholding international law, and promoting earnest dialogue and diplomacy as a primary means of addressing conflicts and tension, including the need for complete and immediate cessation of hostilities across all fronts in the Middle East. We further reaffirm the obligations of all states to preserve different peaceful means, to respect the sovereignty and territorial integrity of all nations, to protect civilians and civilian infrastructure in armed conflicts, and to ensure the safety and security of UN peacekeepers and humanitarian personnel in line with international law, the UN Charter, and relevant UN Security Council resolutions. I thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Representative of the Philippines, on behalf of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. I now give floor to the representative of Liechtenstein, recalling the time limit of statements for delegation speaking in a national capacity of 5 minutes, followed by Egypt and Japan.
Good morning, Madam President. Thank you for convening this assembly in a timely manner after passing of the Federation China on draft resolution 2026/273 proposed by Bahrain on behalf of a group of states in the Security Council. We appreciate the reduction of necessary corporate accounts, the presence of both to exist at today's meeting. Both are in line with the provision for resolution 76262, otherwise known as the initiative. We look forward to receiving a summary of today's meeting to send the Council for their reflection in line with resolution 79327. President, the situation on the Strait of Hormuz is a significant concern across the world. Not simply because the conflict has led to a situation in and around the strait, but because the consequences flow shipping for the transit of vital energy supplies, foodstuffs, and fertilizers, the massive impact on global economy. The conflict is making life unaffordable for many, will undoubtedly leave the most vulnerable hungry. We appreciate the initiative to bring a solution to the situation in the interest of populations the world over, indeed, of all of us. Also create efforts by draft to Council members with concerns over the textiles has unfortunately not resulted in a solution facilitated by the Council. It is important that measures taken by the Council are commensurate with the threats they are meant to address, including the temporal geographical limitations. We also note in the context that the draft did contain some ambiguity, in particular with respect to check on which Council is deriving its legal authority for measures contained in the text. More general point with respect to the drafting of Council resolutions. We encourage all drafters of the text to specify on which chapter intend the Council act. Madam President, today we find ourselves in a different situation when the draft was vetoed. The text is not all at stake, the work was ceasefire between the United States and the Islamic Republic of Iran, and which is full and complete implementation and conclusion of a lasting peace agreement. We know Israel's announced will enter talks with Lebanon and urge negotiations in effect on the basis of the aforementioned ceasefire. We also thank the General for the nomination of Jean Arnaud as Israel's envoy on the Middle East conflict and its consequences, and it's our full support for this work. Madam President, this is a situation where the world rightly expects action by the political organs of the United Nations. We have listened carefully to comments offered by Kuwait this morning and look forward to further steps to present the resolution. I can also call you yourself have made this morning. I thank you, Madam President.
I thank the senior representative of Liechtenstein and now give the floor to the senior representative of Egypt, followed by Japan and Austria.
Madam President, since the very first day of conflict in the Middle East and the Arabian Gulf, Egypt has expressed deep concern regarding the danger of military escalation in the region. It has warned of the looming threat that this escalation poses, namely the expansion of the conflict causing instability and total chaos, thereby endangering regional and international security. In this context, Egypt reiterates its complete rejection of all forms of aggression against the sovereignty and territorial integrity of its sister Arab nations in the Gulf, as well as Jordan and Iraq. We condemn these unacceptable and unjustifiable acts of aggression. We also stress our full solidarity with sister Arab states and our unwavering support for them in the face of any threat to their security and stability. Egypt has therefore co-sponsored Security Council Resolution 2817, adopted by the Council on March 11th. We also stress the need to fully adhere to the UN Charter and international law, including international humanitarian law. This entails completely freeing from target civilians and civilian infrastructure, including energy cities, water desalination plants, and residential areas, as such acts constitute grave violations of international law and pose a direct threat to regional stability. We extend our sincere condolences and deepest sympathies to cities, the family of innocent civilians who have fallen prey to these violations. Madam President, Egypt emphasizes that there can be no military solution to the crisis. Continued escalation will only lead to further violence, destruction, and human suffering, while simultaneously undermining security and stability. In this context, Cairo has made efforts over the past year to build confidence and foster a conducive environment for resolving any concerns regarding the Iranian nuclear program, including by promoting dialogue, diplomatic solution, and cooperation with the IAEA. So in close cooperation with Pakistan and Turkey, Egypt engaged in intensive consultations with various regional and international parties throughout the war to ensure de-escalation and prevent the situation from reaching a point of no return, ultimately paving the way for a ceasefire and a comprehensive, sustainable settlement. In the same vein, Egypt welcomed the initial steps taken by the Secretary-General to revitalize the United Nations' role in addressing the conflict, including his appointment of a personal envoy for this matter. Accordingly, Egypt welcomed the announcement by the US President on April 8 of a 2-week suspension of military operations in the region. This is a positive step towards de-escalation and containing tensions. Egypt stresses that the suspension of military operations by the United States, coupled with the corresponding response from the Iranian side, present a vital opportunity that must be seized to pave the way for negotiations, diplomacy, and constructive dialogue. We welcome the convening of a significant round of negotiations between the United States and Iran on Saturday, April 11, in Pakistan's capital, Islamabad. We look forward to building on the agreements reached during these talks to promote diplomatic solutions that would bring an end to the war through robust and sustainable arrangements. We underscore the need for building upon this step through full adherence to the cessation of military operations and respect for freedom of international navigation. We stress that Egypt will continue to make every effort in coordination with Pakistan and Turkey to advance this objective. Egypt joins the vast majority of the people and government of the region and the world calling for an urgent end to this war, the losses and damages of which would only multiply were military operations to resume and where diplomacy and dialogue, which are the sole window of hope for us all, to be abandoned. Thank you, Madam President.
I thank the Distinguished Representative of Egypt and now to the Distinguished Representative of Japan.
Thank you, Madam President. Achieving peace and order in the Gulf and the entire Middle East is paramount importance, not only for regional security, but for global peace and security. In this context, ensuring safety and navigation in the Strait of Hormuz is indispensable to aiming for normalization of the situation. Japan has consistently supported diplomatic efforts toward early de-escalation. From this perspective, it is regrettable that the Security Council could not play a significant role in stabilizing the situation in the Strait of Hormuz at this juncture. Under these circumstances, Japan expresses its respect and support for mediation efforts by parties concerned, particularly the recent US-Iran negotiations held in Islamabad. We hope that such diplomatic endeavors will lead to a positive impact on the normalization of transit through the strait. As a vital artery for global commerce, the strait must remain open and safe for international navigation. The current situation in the Strait of Hormuz has been undermined global food and energy security. Japan scores that ensuring free and safe passage of the Strait of Hormuz constitutes a vital foundation for global socio-economic stability, particularly for those regions such as Asia and Africa that are most directly vulnerable to disruption. In this regard, Japan welcomes the decision made by the IMO Council on March 19th. We call for the relevant parties to take necessary immediate action to enable establishment of a framework such as safe maritime corridor to facilitate the safe evacuation of maritime ships. Disruption of maritime transport not only threatens the well-being of seafarers, but also hinders the integrity and viability of the international maritime system. For our part, Japan recently hosted a summit meeting to call for a new framework called Partnership on Light Energy and Resource Resilience Asia, our area, to cooperate in emergency responses through financing the procurement of crude oil, petroleum products, and maintaining supply chains in Asia, as well as in structural responses such as establishing stockpiling and release system. In conclusion, we call for further diplomatic efforts by members to restore safe international navigation to the Strait of Hormuz in accordance with international law, as reaffirmed in the Security Council Resolution 2817. Thank you.
Thanks, Distinguished Representative of Japan. I also go to the Distinguished Representative of Ultra, followed by the Islamic Republic of Iran and the United States.
Madam President. Extensive weeks we get here today because once again Council action was blocked by the exercise of the veto by permanent members of the United Nations Security Council. Austria regrets that a matter of fundamental contents was unanswered by the Council. Leagues, even as a landlocked country, Austria is acutely aware of the importance of maritime security and respect for the rule of law at sea. The legal situation is crystal clear. As a state used for international navigation and connecting two parts of the high seas, all ships enjoy rights to continuous, expeditious passage through the Strait of Hormuz, according to Article 38 UNCLOS. It also according to customary international law. This right cannot be suspended unilaterally and continues to apply in times of armed conflict. The unilateral blockade of or restrictions to freedom of navigation in Strait of Hormuz has severe consequences for food and energy security across the world, as many have said before. This threatens to destabilize the global economy and risks putting most vulnerable countries to the brink of famine. Millions will suffer if this situation remains unaddressed. Madam President, any natural actions restricting freedom of navigation in the Strait of Hormuz or other international straits are therefore completely unacceptable. Austria strongly calls for freedom of navigation through the Strait of Hormuz to be swiftly restored. We welcome the Secretary General's initiative on fertilizer acts as a pragmatic first step. But let's be clear, we welcome it, but pragmatic workarounds are not substitute for rule of law. Iran's international obligations remain untouched by such an initiative. Colleagues may speak plainly about the widest future Iran must never acquire a nuclear weapon. For Austria, which has championed the PD and prohibition of nuclear weapons and has worked out the world war and also a region free of nuclear arms for decades. This condition is not rhetorical, it is a blur of foreign policy. And people of Iran who have endured decades of repression deserve respect, the human rights and the humanity.
But military escalation is not the answer. Austria is gravely concerned with the erosion of the international order with the UN Charter at its core. In the same vein, indiscriminate attacks by Iran and neighbors in the Gulf in the region are completely unacceptable and must stop immediately. And this was also expressed by Austria's Foreign Minister Beate Mendranya upon her visit to Riyadh only last week. Colleagues, a diplomatic solution is the only way forward. De-escalation and diplomacy are urgently needed. Austria therefore calls on all sides to continue to respect the ceasefire agreed on last week to allow for exchanges. Austria does not simply call for diplomacy and dialogue as an attitude. Federal Chancellor Christian Stocker and our Foreign Minister Beate Mendranya have been in constant contact with all partners across the region and with the parties to this conflict. We grateful to Pakistan and others for their efforts in Islamabad. That this talk did not succeed as a setback. Diplomacy doesn't solve because one round of talk failed. Vienna has historic negotiation on the Iranian nuclear question before. We stand ready to do so again. Our offer is sincere and our commitment to mediation is unconditional. At least our path forward to a peaceful solution. Austria is ready to do its part to help achieve this goal. Thank you.
I thank the Distinguished Representative of Austria. I now the floor to the Distinguished Representative of the Islamic Republic of Iran for the new speaking order marking this end.
In the name of the Madam President, before delivering my statement, I would like to express the strong objection and serious concerns regarding the bias and one-sided statement delivered by Excellency in the capacity of President of the General Assembly, which the voting around mandate and institutional responsibilities of the office overlooked the root cause of the situation and make unfounded allegations against member states. It is a well-established principle grounded in the state of Charter of the United Nations and rule procedure of the General Assembly that the holder of the office must exercise a strict impartiality and refrain from adopting positions that would compromise the neutrality and integrity of the General Assembly. Madam President, the vetoes cast by China and Russia were timely justified and necessary. During the Council meeting, my delegation made clear that it takes one-sided and ignore the root causes of crisis. The eager and severe war of declared by the United States and Israel against Iran on 28 February. Its adoption would have set a dangerous precedent, eroding the sovereign rights of the coastal state, undermining the UN Charter, and increasing the risk of escalation. Madam President, we send to all of the actions, including effort to impose a naval blockade, the state of Hormuz further demonstrate the flawed logic behind the draft. The unlawful measures escalate tension and threaten both military security and international trade. Against this backdrop, I remark the following point. First, the Islamic Republic as a responsible state committed to the United Nations Charter and the international law, existential freedom of navigation and maritime security in Persian Gulf, the state of Hormuz, and the Gulf of Oman. For the case one has fulfilled responsibilities in good faith as a coastal state of the state of Hormuz, ensuring security and safeguarding freedom of navigation. Iran, in accordance with international law, has implemented necessary and precautionary measures to ensure the safety and security of navigation through the state of Hormuz. These measures are designed to facilitate the continuous and safe sale of vessels by preventing exploitation of these waterways for hostile or military purposes by aggressors and their affiliates. Second, the imposition of the maritime blockade of the United States constitutes a grave violation of the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Europe. This unlawful action is flagrant breach of the prohibition on threat of use of force enshrined in Article 2 and constitutes a clear act of violation on international law by seeking to obstruct maritime traffic and from Iranian coast. The United States unlawfully interferes with the exercise of sovereign rights of the Islamic Republic of Iran and infringes upon the rights of the third states unlawful maritime commerce under international law. The United States must bear full responsibility for this internationally wrongful act or any consequences arising therefrom, including the impact on the regional and international peace and security. The realization of principles of freedom of navigation and maritime safety in the ocean from the Sea of Oman, particularly in the state of Hormuz, which lies within the territorial seas of coastal states, is only possible through full respect for the sovereignty and sovereign rights of all coastal states. As such, sustainable stability in the Strait of Hormuz and the region can only be achieved through the cessation of aggression and the full respect for Iran's legitimate rights and interests. Over the past 3 days of the United States and Israel waging war of aggression against Iran, aggressors have crossed every legal, moral, and humanitarian boundary. They have violated international humanitarian law and committed war crimes by deliberately and discriminatingly targeting civilian infrastructure, including residential areas, schools, hospitals, healthcare facilities, airports, sport facilities, and cultural and historical sites. Furthermore, the United States utilized military bases and facilitated in the countries of the Persian Gulf region. Evidence indicates that military movement and operational preparation were underway at these bases for the planning, preparation, equipping, execution of unlawful military attacks against the Islamic Republic of Iran. Despite Iran's clear warning, such unlawful action was planned. Iran has formally reported this development with support recommendation to the Security Council, the Secretary General. Iran welcomes support any diplomatic affairs and credible initiative capable of bringing but the sustainable end to its unlawful and unwarranted war, including all genuine affairs of Pakistan, Turkey, and Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, as well as affairs of China and Russia. Any viable solution must ensure a definitive or universal end to aggression and establish a just and durable peace grounded in a credible and verifiable guarantee against any recurrence. This regard, we express our sincere appreciation for the efforts of the government of Pakistan, particularly the Prime Minister and Chief of the Army Staff, for the constructive mediation and for hosting this important negotiation. Despite our mistrust of the United States stemming from its repeated betrayal of diplomacy, we nevertheless entered the negotiation in good faith and remain cautiously optimistic. We believe that should the United States adopt a rational and constructive approach and refrain from advanced demands on consistent with international law, the negotiation can lead to a meaningful outcome. And finally, we reject an unfounded and politically motivated allegation against my country made in this meeting. These claims, like any legal basis, serve only to divert attention from the reality on the ground, namely illegal and civil war launched by the United States and Israel against Iran. Some referred The Security Council Resolution 2817, the legislation of this resolution have been circulated as a document of the General Assembly, and the Security Council Resolution 2817 regard the unlawful violation and armed attack by the United States and Israel against Iran, and in ignoring denies Iran inherent rights of self-defense exercised in accordance with Article 51 of the UN Charter, meaning any reference to that the Council fails in its responsibility to maintain international peace and security, and necessarily adopting such a politically motivated resolution is legitimate further act of aggression. Should be called that under international law, the Security Council is bound to exercise authority in full conformity with the principles of the Charter of the United Nations. Any departure from these fundamental principles undermine the legal validity and moral authority of this decision. Thank you.
Thanks to the representative of the Islamic Republic of Iran. I now the floor to the representative of Denmark, by New Zealand and Australia. Madam President, thank you for convening this debate. This vital that the Security Council decided by use of veto, the United Nations as a whole is not. This fragile moment for global affairs, the international community, including through the General Assembly, must let its voice be heard. Denmark strongly regrets that in the face of mounting escalation across the Middle East, the Security Council was unable to act due to the use of veto by 2 permanent members. As a primary organ for the maintenance of international peace and security, this was not missed for a unified, collective response. Conflict in the Middle East is now going on for more than 6 weeks, causing death and destruction throughout the region. Iran's actions near and around the Strait of Hormuz had led to food shortages, rise in energy prices, and other adverse effects across the world. Global growth, commerce, and development depend on freedom of aviation. The repercussions for the global economy and, increasingly, for food security across developing countries are enormous. As a great maritime nation, Denmark is committed to maritime security, to open sea links, and to the safety of all seafarers. Denmark's vote on April 7 reflected our belief in the urgent need to address these developments. We regret that the Council was not able to come together and present a joint solution. Madam President, we welcome to seek ceasefires with the United States and Iran, and thank Pakistan and all parties involved for facilitating this important agreement. Denmark welcomes all diplomatic efforts to reduce tensions and find a negotiated settlement. A lasting ceasefire is an essential step towards swift and permanent end to this war. All efforts and negotiations must be resumed in good faith. This conflict, however, is not confined to Iran or its neighbors across the Gulf. The situation in Lebanon, in particular, also risks spiraling out of control and puts at risk the current regional de-escalation. Denmark called for the inclusion of Lebanon regional de-escalating effort and urged all parties to work toward a lasting political solution. It is crucial to protect civil populations and critical infrastructure across the region. De-escalation and respect for international law, including international humanitarian law, remain as important as ever. These international rules were agreed upon after brutal lessons learned from war and devastation. All parties must keep these lessons in mind and abide by these important legal guardrails. Madam President, many aspects of this conflict have such shockwaves across the globe. This is particularly true for the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, caused by Iran's actions. The closure is not only a disruption, but a dangerous escalation measured in lives and livelihoods lost. It is vital to ensure freedom of navigation in the Strait of Hormuz. Denmark stands ready with our international partners to contribute to this end. We thank the United Kingdom and France for their efforts to advance this vital work. Madam President, closing. In today's insecure world, conflict is rarely, forever, contained to where it can. Its effects ripple across the globe, impacting countries and sectors seemingly far removed. This is the reality we're facing in the Middle East. This too must be the lens through which we find solutions. We call on all parties to respect Security Council Resolution 2817, and we urge all to respect and abide by the Council's decisions. Then remains committed to safeguard peace, security, and stability in the Middle East. Thank you. Thanks to the representative of Denmark. I now give the floor to the representative of New Zealand.
President, it has been New Zealand's deep disappointment that we meet again to discuss the use of veto. New Zealand is a long-standing opponent of the veto. We are a strong supporter of Resolution 76/262 and are disappointed that it has been triggered so frequently. The Security Council's legitimacy lies in its ability to fulfil its responsibility under the UN Charter to maintain international peace and security and to address issues of pressing concern in Member States. When a resolution is blocked through use of the veto, the Council is deprived of that ability and credibility are undermined. In this instance, 2 permanent members have prevented the Council from supporting an effort to ensure safe and secure navigation through the Strait of Hormuz. The closure of the strait is deeply damaging not only to supply chains, but energy markets and food security, and is causing suffering around the world, especially among the world's most vulnerable. The resolution in question also contains important affirmations of navigation rights and freedoms. These are cornerstones of global security and prosperity that benefit every country. New Zealand will plead to co-sponsor Resolution 2817 last month, one of a record number of member states, which reaffirmed the important concept of freedom of navigation and maritime security. We welcome the continued effort by Bahrain and the international community to restore safe passage to the Strait of Hormuz. As reaffirmed in Resolution 2817 and by the International Maritime Organization Council, the exercise of navigational rights and freedoms by merchant and commercial vessels in accordance with international law must be respected. We therefore disappointed that Council could not adopt the resolution last week. Particularly regret that, in this instance, the 2 permanent members who exercised the veto did so despite extensive efforts by the resolution's opponents to revise the text to accommodate the concerns of Member States. New Zealand strongly reiterates the importance of ensuring that all ships and aircraft can exercise the right to transit passage through the Strait of Hormuz without interference in accordance with international law as reflected in UNCLOS. New Zealand remains deeply concerned about the conflict. Civilians and the global economy are being directly affected. It is critical that all parties uphold their commitment to the ceasefire and work to find an urgent diplomatic solution. Thank you.
Thank the distinguished representative of New Zealand. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Australia, followed by Vietnam and Ireland.
Thank you, President. Australia commends our partners for their efforts in the Security Council to ensure respect of navigational rights and freedoms in the Strait of Hormuz. We're disappointed that those were exercised last week. Navigational rights and freedoms matter for all states. All states benefit from an open Strait of Hormuz, a safe and predictable environment for global supply chains. That's why Australia is participating in discussions on multinational diplomatic efforts to support navigational rights and freedoms. President, the human, security and economic impacts of the Iran conflict are significant and far-reaching. Condemn the indiscriminate attacks inflicted by Iran and its proxies across the Middle East, including against civilian infrastructure and commercial vessels. We welcome all efforts towards a de-escalation, including the ceasefire announced last week between the United States, Israel and Iran. Australia urges all parties to uphold the ceasefire in full. Negotiations must continue towards a resolution of the conflict. We will support a reopening of the strait. The human cost and global economic impact of this conflict is mounting. The warnings, including from the IMF, are dire. We are seeing unprecedented shocks to global energy, fertilizer and petrochemical supplies, with immediate and long-lasting consequences reverberating around the world. In our region, Pacific Island countries are uniquely exposed to price volatility, supply chain disruptions and fuel shortages. More broadly, the World Food Programme has warned that Iran's actions in the strait could push 45 million people into extreme hunger by June. The world's most vulnerable are most at risk. President, the expansion of the conflict into Lebanon, the loss of life and the displacement of more than 1.2 million civilians is deeply distressing. Ceasefire must be extended to Lebanon to prevent further loss of life and guarantee the states needed to negotiate a lasting settlement. President, Australia repeats its call for all parties across the region to uphold international humanitarian law and civilians to be protected and to cease any attacks deliberately threaten the safety and security of humanitarian personnel. Thank you.
Thanks, the representative of Australia, and the floor to the representative of Vietnam.
Madam President, Vietnam aligns itself with the statement delivered by the Philippines on behalf of Asia and wishes to highlight the strong interest in the situation in the Middle East, marked by two special foreign minister Min and the minister's statement. Vietnam remains deeply concerned by the ongoing conflict in the Middle East, including latest developments in the Strait of Hormuz, which have caused immense human suffering and significant economic consequences. Its impacts extend well beyond the parties directly concerned, disrupting trade and energy supply chains, heightening political and economic uncertainties, and further constraining the development prospects of many countries, especially developing countries. We regret that the Security Council has not been able to take united and impartial action to address the current crisis and serious implications for regional peace and security. We strongly oppose the military attacks against sovereign states, particularly attacks against those countries that have pledged their non-involvement. We are especially alarmed by and oppose attacks against civilians and civilian infrastructure. In all circumstances, civilian and critical civilian infrastructure must never be targeted and attacked. Any such attack is a violation of international law and relevant UN resolutions, including Security Council Resolution 2573. This current crisis is yet again a manifestation of the erosion of international law, the continued infringement of the sovereignty and territorial integrity of states, the disrespect for the fundamental principle of no threat or use of force, and principle of peaceful settlement of disputes, are in fact endangering very foundations of the United Nations and collective security architecture. Vietnam therefore calls on all parties to put an end to hostilities, especially against civilians and critical civil infrastructure, exercise maximum restraint, and avoid actions that lead to further escalation, miscalculation, and wider confrontation. We underscore the fundamental importance of respect for international law and the UN Charter. We firmly believe that international law must be applied consistently to all states, regardless of size and in all circumstances. Selectivity in the application of international law ultimately undermines international law to the detriment of smaller states. It is Vietnam's view that maritime safety and security, the freedom of navigation and overflight must be upheld in accordance with international law, especially the 1982 United Nations Convention on Law of the Sea. This is essential not only for stability in the Middle East, particularly the Strait of Hormuz, but also for safeguarding flow of energy and essential goods and preserving global economic stability. Finally, Madam President, the current crisis immediately reminds us once again that only dialogue conducted in good faith and supported by genuine political will can pave the way toward lasting peace. We welcome temporary ceasefire and encourage parties concerned to build momentum to intensify diplomatic efforts, engage in meaningful dialogue, and pursue a balanced and constructive approach toward a stable and mutually acceptable solution. We commend efforts of countries and partners that have worked to maintain channels of communication, facilitate engagement, and create space for diplomacy. Such efforts are indispensable and deserve continued support. Thank you, Madam President.
I thank the senior representative of Vietnam. I now give the floor to the representative of Ireland, followed by Brazil and the United States.
President, Ireland last step into the European Union. It is deeply regrettable that last week the Security Council was unable to reach a resolution on the critical issue of the closure of the Strait of Hormuz shipping. We would acknowledge the efforts from Bahrain, which sent on support in the matter. We remain deeply concerned with the situation in the East, including the continued restriction on lawful transit passage and freedom of navigation near and in the Strait of Hormuz. The critical importance of the threat has been clearly demonstrated in recent weeks. and the most immediate impact on the United States in the region, the reverberations have been felt across the world as trade of essential commodities and important supply chains have been severely disrupted. This restriction of direct humanitarian, secure, and economic impact across the globe. It is likely to impose heavily on the poorest of vulnerable community in relation to energy, food security, and hunger. Such restrictions and acts threaten safe navigation through state are simply unacceptable. We must be clear: maritime security, freedom of navigation, transit must be respected in line with international law, as reflected in UNCLOS as a Fair Security Council Resolution 2017. President, we welcome the ceasefire agreed by the United States and Iran and commend Pakistan for its mediation efforts. We sincerely hope dialogue will continue, that progress can be made, and a lasting agreement can be reached that will bring permanent end to the conflict and ensure wide regional security. We continue to look for dialogue and diplomacy and all parties to hold international law, including protection of civilians. We remain deeply concerned with the broader humanitarian and security situation in the Middle East. The situation is particularly concerning. We deeply regret that Israel has not extended the ceasefire to Lebanon. We have been clear in our condemnation over Hezbollah's attack in Israel and Israel's wholly disproportionate response. We urge Israel to halt its operations and allow Lebanese armed forces to serve their role in providing security for Lebanon and Lebanese people. We welcome the announcement discussed between Israel and Lebanon, and we push hard to seek a diplomatic solution, providing from all attacks against UNIFIL personnel. Finally, we must note our concerns with the dire humanitarian situation in Gaza. We call this regional restriction on aid access and facilitate supply services to reach people across the Gaza Strip. We are all concerned that the situation in the Bank will continue to activity and that of violence against Palestinian communities. All these civilians continue to suffer the consequences of conflict and instability across the Middle East, with spillover effects across the globe. President, in spite of the challenges we face, we continue to believe that the UN and multilateral assistance is fundamental to delivery of peace and security for the Middle East. We hope the Security Council will return to this matter in course and provide peace, lasting peace across the region. Thank you.
I thank the Senior Representative for Ireland. I now give the floor to the Senior Representative of Brazil.
Madam President, you convene this meeting. Brazil follows with attention and deep concern the situation of the whole Middle East. The recent escalation constitutes a serious threat to international peace and security, with dramatic humanitarian and economic concerns. Since the beginning of the conflict in the region, 2,100 people have lost their lives in Lebanon, 2,400 in Iran, 1,800 in Israel, and a staggering 72,000 confronted deaths occurred in Gaza. It was condemned the attacks taken by the United States and Israel against Iran and the unwanted subsequent attacks by Iran, and appeals to all parties to resume negotiations aiming at reaching a lasting solution to the conflict. The fact that this attack were carried out once again in the midst of diplomatic conversations to reach agreement is highly detrimental to the cause of peace and here the prospects for lasting solution. Brazil condemned all attacks and military acts that result in civilian casualties, damage to civilian infrastructure, and violation of sovereignty and territorial integrity of states. These actions are unacceptable and must cease immediately. All parties must strictly comply with international law, in particular international humanitarian law, ensuring the protection of civilians. Military escalation on deep human suffering and undermines regional stability. The strike with girls' school in Brandon City of NAP shamed the lives of more than 115 children, warrant the strongest condemnation. Brazil expresses its strong solidarity with the country's people of the Gulf directly affected by the conflict. We also extend our condolences to the families of the victims in all states involved. Moreover, express concern with the hindrance of illicit passage through the Strait of Hormuz and recall the importance of respecting vital transit passage straits in line with the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. We remain gravely concerned by the situation in Lebanon. We urge Israel to immediately halt its military actions and to withdraw all its forces from Lebanese territory. Furthermore, Brazil condemns the attacks against the United Nations Interim Force in Lebanon in the field and calls attacks against the United Nations Peacekeeping Mission and facility represent violations of international law and international humanitarian law. The United Nations must play a central role in maintenance of international peace and security, with the Security Council bearing primary responsibility in this regard. At the same time, member states should support for the immediate cessation of hostilities. We must act together to achieve negotiated solutions to the crisis that uphold the principles and purposes of the UN Charter and international law. Reiterate our support for the effort of regional actors and other relevant partners, including Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and Turkey, aimed at promoting the escalation dialogue and diplomatic solutions. We welcome initiatives that point towards the cessation of hostilities across the region, the resumption of negotiations, including for the peaceful reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. We urge all parties to engage in diplomatic efforts and negotiations in good faith to put an end to the ongoing conflicts. Dialogue remains the only viable to be in sustainable peace. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Brazil. I now give the floor to the representative of the United States, followed by the United Kingdom and Pakistan.
Thank you, Madam President. Colleagues, we are in a time in history that's a time for choosing. The American people have been very clear. We have stood with Bahrain and the rest of the people of the Gulf and our allies in the Middle East during this time of reckoning. Unfortunately, Russia and China have chosen to oppose them, even as Iranian missiles rained down on Gulf cities and civilian infrastructure. Colleagues, the decision of Russia and China to veto a draft resolution that sought to protect freedom of navigation and maritime security in and around the Strait of Hormuz was truly unfortunate. Deliberately chose to turn a blind eye, and worse, chose to permit Iran's attack on its neighbors, terror against some people, and set threat that's to place on the global economy. The Council resolution submitted by the Kingdom of Bahrain last week was not unreasonable. They engaged every country on the Security Council. They took their input and their thoughts and reflected on board. It's a simple resolution drafted by and for the region that Iran must attack civilian shipping and the neighboring states in the Gulf, stop threatening neighbors, and stop threatening the freedom of navigation in the Strait of Hormuz. Almost 15 years ago, Iran took Americans hostage as its act of its new regime. This year, tried to take each of your economies hostage. We are talking about a regime that the Secretary General's own account recruits soldiers, uses civilian infrastructures for attacks, and goads its proxies, terrorist proxies, to use human shield on a regular basis. We are talking about a regime which has contravened dozens and dozens of UN resolutions in last year alone. We are talking about a regime in Iran promised no more executions, and yet has averaged at least one execution per day of young protesters who simply yearn for freedom and a better life. This was after killing 40,000 of its people in a weekend. 2 weeks ago, the Security Council adopted a resolution with 136 co-sponsors, the most supported resolution in U.S. history, demanding that Iran cease attacks and stop obstructing shipping, that Iran stop launching missiles and drones to hotels and ports and resorts and airports, and attacking its neighbors in their civilian homes and neighborhoods. Yet instead, respecting the will of the overwhelming majority of the society, including many of us sitting right here, and supporting Bahrain and other EC members of Jordan, Russia has chosen to remain as it has over the past year a critical supplier of military equipment to Iran, delivering high aircraft, helicopters, armored vehicles, and other arms, many of which violate Security Council Resolution 1929, which bans arms transfers to Iran. Iran has given Russia 100 attack drones technology it's for its use in Ukraine. Meanwhile, China has for years imported over 90% of Iran's illicit oil. And both countries persist in their efforts to obstruct the Security Council's work to implement sanctions measures that were snapped back into place by an overwhelming vote in the Council last September. The measures required all member states of the United Nations be implementing an arms embargo against Iran, banning the transfer and trade of missile technology for reasonable financial assets, measures designed to address the threat posed by Iran's nuclear, missile, and conventional arms programs. All of these things were snapped back in place, and the world is obligated to enforce these measures. As we voted for, and as I voted in my voting, the world has time for choosing. There are certainly better partners than this genocidal regime, Iran. We, the United States, have chosen to stand with our allies, both in the region and here in this body. Instead, others vetoed this resolution had chosen to shield the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism. Madam President, colleagues, let me reiterate what I said to the Security Council last week. In the days since this resolution was vetoed, as critical shipments have been delayed, fertilizer has failed to reach countries in Africa and South Asia that needed for planting season, vulnerable populations have faced food insecurity. It's clear chose obstruction over responsibility. As we speak, humanitarian operations are being disrupted because aid, humanitarian aid, life-saving aid, has not been able to safely transit the strait. So I want to reiterate two simple messages from the United States, from the American people, to members of this assembly. First, the United States stands firmly with our partners in the Middle East and around the world. Second, the Strait of Hormuz, as are all straits around the world. The Strait of Gibraltar, the Bering Strait, streets of Malacca, as international waterways are too vital to be choked, to be mined, to be weaponized, and held hostage by the likes of the Iranian regime. Nevertheless, even in the face of Iran's attempted expression of destruction, we will continue to work so that food aid, fertilizer, energy, commercialists can flow once again through this vital waterway, free from attack, threats, mining, or extortion. Let me be clear, the United States will continue to act with partners wherever possible to ensure that outcome so that the world is ultimately safer, stronger, and more prosperous. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, the representative of the United States, and now the floor to the representative of the United Kingdom.
Thank you, Madam President. The United Kingdom is grateful to Bahrain for its leadership in bringing forward the draft resolution, and for its constructive, good faith efforts to build consensus across the Council on issues of critical importance in international peace and security. We regret the draft resolution was vetoed. Madam President, navigation rights freedoms are a cornerstone of the global economy. Attacks on international shipping in the Gulf have been deeply damaging to the world, blocking vital exports of fertilizer, liquefied natural gas, and jet fuel, with economic and humanitarian consequences for communities the world over. Iran does not have the right to unlawfully impede transit passage through the Strait of Hormuz. We call for full respect for fundamental navigation rights and freedoms as enshrined in the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea and customary international law. We reiterate our condemnation of Iran's reckless attacks against the region. We are profoundly concerned by Iran's continued destabilizing activities, including threats to maritime security, an action that will further regulation in an already fragile region. Our priority remains supporting regional stability and a lasting end to this conflict. We welcome the ceasefire and talks between the US and Iran. We will continue to work with all partners to encourage a lasting and sustainable solution to the conflict and the full, immediate and conditional opening of the Strait of Hormuz, including rejection of holds on vessels which seek to pass through it. The United Kingdom has already convened more than 40 countries share our aim to restore navigational rights and freedoms. Tomorrow, the UK and France will co-host a level summit to advance a coordinated, independent, multinational plan to safeguard institutional shipping when the conflict ends. Russia and China's vetoes do not diminish the importance of this issue, nor our collective responsibility to address it. We will continue to work with the Security Council and beyond to support long-term stability in the region and the maintenance of international peace and security. And I thank you.
I thank this representative of the United Kingdom, and now give the floor to the representative of Portugal, followed by Switzerland and Czechia.
Madam President, Excellencies, Portugal aligns itself with the statement delivered by the European Union and wishes to have the following remark in its national capacity. As co-sponsor of the veto issue, Portugal stressed the need for transparency in the Security Council, use of the veto. We regret that the Security Council was prevented again to act in the current item amendment. Now for the 14th time in less than 3 years, preventing collective action. This is the first vetoes of the year, yet the veto has been used 24 times since the initiative was adopted by consensus 4 years ago. This trend erodes credibility and undermines the ability to Bill of the United Nations to pass. We therefore give our strong support for the General Assembly as a foreign fund for structured security, also for engagement and action for the wide international community and Council and our allies, thereby strengthening the legitimacy of multilateralism of the UN itself. The present context also urges all the relevant parties in the crisis to uphold international law, including international humanitarian law, and freedom of navigation. Indeed, while all of us bear the consequences of restrictions on maritime trade in terms of increasing energy prices, constraining production, accessibility, and security, it is yet again the most vulnerable and one that can least afford it in a developing country that faces this burden. We want to support the creation of a dedicated task force within the UN Secretariat at the level of member states to facilitate fertilizer trade with a humanitarian perspective. By pleading for the holding of ceasefire, Portugal strongly supports a solution based on dialogue and diplomacy as the only viable way to achieve a comprehensive and lasting peace, including Lebanon, in order to protect its sovereignty and territorial integrity. In this sense, we commend the efforts of all mediators, notably Pakistan, and we will continue supporting all peace efforts, including, of course, those of the United Nations. I thank my President.
I thank the distinguished representative for Portugal. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative for Switzerland.
Madam President, I would like to start by expressing the deep concern of the Part of Switzerland regarding the regional situation in the Middle East. We express solidarity with all victims and emphasize that any use of force inconsistent with the United Nations Charter is acceptable, and illegal attack cannot justify a response that would itself violate international law. Switzerland therefore strongly condemns attacks against the civilian population, against essential services and civilian infrastructure. Such attacks are prohibited under international law, international humanitarian law, and all parties to conflict are required to uphold this law under all circumstances. In this regard, we condemn the recent attacks affecting several countries in the region, including Gulf states, targeting essential civilian infrastructure, notably ports and maritime traffic. Water, energy, and fuel supply infrastructure, along with healthcare facilities, have been damaged or destroyed. In here, I would like to express our deep solidarity with our countries. This trend to target civilian populations is not limited to the East, but they may be nearest or elsewhere. The civilian population must be protected. This conflict and disruption of navigation and stuff for removed. The cause also have negative repercussions on the humanitarian situation, on supply chains, on energy security, and international trade that extend far beyond the region. We reiterate that the freedom of navigation in international trade is enshrined in customary international law, as well as in the United Nations Convention on Law of the Sea, and in binding all states. Switzerland reaffirms the premise of the peaceful settlement of dispute. We welcome, therefore, the agreed ceasefire and encourage the continuation of constructive dialogue with a view to reaching a lasting agreement. De-escalation and a permanent ceasefire for the entire region remain imperative. Madam President, the member states of the United Nations have entrusted the Security Council with primary responsibility for maintaining international peace and security, and discharging its duties, the Security Council asked in accordance with the principles of the United Nations, and their responsibility called for a united response. The view is not intended to be a obstruct, but a responsibility for final decision-making exercised in the name of international peace and in the frame of shared responsibility. In this context, Switzerland always regret the exercise of the veto. We reiterate that negotiations with the Council must be conducted in good faith and oriented towards common objective in accordance with principles of the UN Charter. Call all Council members to demonstrate the political will that is needed for the Council to fulfill its mandate and to work toward a return to diplomacy. And if the Council cannot discharge its responsibility, it is up to the General Assembly to consider the situation, and if it be too much, I thank you.
I thank the representative for Switzerland. I now give the floor to the representative for Africa, followed by Canada and Germany.
President, first of all, I'd like to say that the Czech Republic last out the statement delivered by the European Union. Madam President, the Czech Republic welcomes this opportunity to discuss the recent use of veto in the European Council. We have consistently supported the veto initiative, which gives the General Assembly an important opportunity to scrutinize the use of the veto and to hold Council members accountable for the exercise of this exceptional power. Such a prerogative must never be beyond political and moral scrutiny. This is precisely why we are here today. The 7th of April, the Security Council failed to respond to a serious threat to regional stability and international maritime commerce. Not one, but 2 vetoes were cast. Russia and China choose to protect their ally, Iran, rather than support a measured, necessary response to growing dangers in the Strait of Hormuz. The draft resolution tabled by Bahrain, together with Jordan, Kuwait, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates, sought to encourage coordinated efforts to protect commercial shipping in the Strait of Hormuz. It was modest, practical, and simple. Bahrain and its regional partners considered seriously and thoroughly with all members of the Council to get on board and pursue a balanced and focused attacks. We supported Bahrain's initiative and deeply regret that the resolution was not adopted. Dear colleagues, we cannot ignore the scale of the threat the current Iranian regime poses to its neighbors, to its own people. For 47 years, Iran has pursued policies that have undermined peace and security across the region. It has armed terrorist proxies, targeted civilians, threatened its neighbors, breached nuclear commitments, disrupted shipping lines, and destabilized governments. At the same time, we all want to see tensions in the Strait of Hormuz de-escalate. We therefore welcome the diplomatic efforts currently underway, as well as the importance of full respect for international law, including the law of the sea, as reflected in the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. We also commend the UN Secretary General's decision to establish a Europe-wide task force and enduring humanitarian flows to the Strait of Hormuz. This is vital to mitigate mitigating risks to global food security and ultimately to protecting the most vulnerable. Mr. President, the veto power is an extraordinary responsibility. But the self-favor power we witnessed not restraint, its reckless misuse. It did nothing to end the transformation and maintain international peace and security. Instead, it deepened instability and uncertainty in the region and beyond. I thank you.
Thanks, Representative of Czechia. I now give the floor to the Representative of Canada.
Thank you, Madam President. Canada wishes to express sincere recognition to the Kingdom of Bahrain for their leadership at the UN Security Council, representing several states of the Gulf as well as Jordan in efforts to protect the freedom of navigation in the Strait of Hormuz. Canada was happy to be one of the 156 co-sponsors of Resolution 2817 of the Security Council, which condemns Iran's attacks on the states of the Gulf and Jordan, calls for a state of hostilities, and reaffirms support to sovereignty, to the protection of civilians, and to freedom of navigation in the Strait of Hormuz. Canada was disappointed the Security Council was ultimately unable to reach an agreement on draft resolution S/2026/273 pertaining to the Strait of Hormuz. This outcome is not in sync with Canada's expectations vis-à-vis the Council's duty to act decisively, given imminent threats to international peace and security pursuant to the mandate provided to it by the United Nations Charter. Canada remains resolved to support diplomacy and dialogue so as to reach a lasting solution to the conflict and to avoid any further escalation. We will continue to support our allies and partners in the region, as well as efforts geared towards preserving the safety and security of maritime and air navigation.
President, we thank Pakistan and all the others involved in their work to facilitate recent negotiations and a ceasefire. Canada welcomes the current ceasefire, but temporary pause is not a permanent solution. Canada affirms the importance of respecting international navigation rights in the Strait of Hormuz and surrounding waterways, and safety of the seafarers whose livelihoods depend on open sea lanes. Canada is also taking concrete action. We are contributing 23.6 million barrels of oil to the International Energy Agency's collective release to stabilize global energy markets. Looking ahead, Canada prepared to play its part in the design of an international approach to escalate tensions and to provide guarantees of safe passage for this essential and strategic corridor. Canada will continue to support efforts to the broadest possible international consensus, included through the General Assembly, to uphold respect for international navigation routes as well as international law. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative of Canada. I now give the floor to the Representative of Germany, Florida, Italy, and Malaysia.
Madam President, Germany myself agree with the statement that has been delivered by the European Union this morning, and I would to a few additional points in my initial passage. Germany deplores that the draft resolution that was submitted by Bahrain was not adopted due to vetoes of two members of the Security Council. The resolution would be an important contribution for ensuring freedom of navigation and maritime security in the Strait of Hormuz. In addition, it would set a clear signal to Iran they must not scandalize the freedom of navigation for political purposes or harm third countries. We appreciate Bahrain's dedicated leadership and flexibility during negotiations, in particular, emphasizing matters of de-escalation and the necessity to rely on international law. It is thus deplorable that two leaders swallowed an important opportunity to contribute to a warming situation that affects many countries assembled this building day. I want to clear the Russian attacks against countries called Operation Council and other countries in the region are unjustified and they are unlawful. But targeting civilian infrastructure is particularly unacceptable. Iranian attacks in the Strait of Hormuz and Persian Gulf constitute a violation of international law reflected in the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. The violations of the freedom of navigation affect trade, ethnic economies, supply chains, as well as energy and food security around the globe, and ultimately they would hurt those vulnerable among us. Mr. President, Germany remains undecided on a political solution and bring lasting peace to the region. We welcome the treaty states in Iran started in Islamabad and thank Pakistan for its media and efforts. Germany remains ready to work towards a comprehensive political solution. Iran must never acquire nuclear weapons. It must respect obligations under the MT and its comprehensive safety agreement with the IAEA. And Iran must actually ensure maritime security, freedom of navigation, and free, safe, and orderly passage in the Strait of Hormuz and its agencies in line with its obligations under international law. The Security Council will not be paralyzed by regional stability, international peace, and security at stake. For our part, Germany will introduce diplomacy, de-escalation, and negotiate a solution. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Representative of Germany. I now give the floor to the Representative of Italy.
Madam President. Dear colleagues, Italy and myself will statement delivered to the European Union the wish to add some remarks on institutional capacity. Italy thanks Pakistan and the other regional partners for their efforts to facilitate talks on the situation in the Gulf region. There is no alternative to dialogue. We always said that diplomacy is the only way, and we hope new talks will take place soon towards substantive nation settlement and that ceasefire is respected, including in Lebanon. Deputy Minister, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Italy, in Totan, visited Beirut on Monday to express solidarity and support to President and Lebanese institutions at this critical time. We must avoid other civilian casualties and encourage dialogue. In this regard, we welcome the announcement a few minutes ago of a ceasefire in Lebanon and the hope all parties will hold. Italy is a very worried for the situation in the Strait of Hormuz. God has serious consequences for global economy and for food security in the most fragile countries. When the environment will be conducive, We are in favor of appropriate efforts to contribute to ensuring freedom of aviation in the Strait of Hormuz. It is also very concerned for the impacts on relations between Iran and the other Gulf countries. It is crucial to build trust. It is also ready to do its part for sustainability, and this end we remain in close contact with all partners involved. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Italy. I now give the floor to the representative of Malaysia, followed by Indonesia and Sierra Leone.
Thank you, Madam President. Malaysia last year with the unbelievable by the Philippines on behalf of ASEAN. Malaysia is deeply concerned over recent escalation of military actions and retaliatory strikes across the Middle East. These developments threaten regional stability and run counter the principles of sovereignty, territorial integrity, and the prohibition of the use of force under the UN Charter. We call all parties to exercise maximum restraint and hostilities and avoid any further escalation. We acknowledge the restraint shown by the states of the Action Council. Such restraint is critical to ongoing efforts for de-escalation of tensions. They first stress the responses to the conflict must even avoid elective attribution of responsibility. Peace can be built on understanding. It can be built on trust, consistency, respect for international law. Above all, the cause of this conflict must be addressed. Without this, we will only continue to manage symptoms. The crisis deepens beneath the surface. Madam President, Malaysia is also deeply disturbed by the continued military attacks by Iran and Lebanon. The actions constitute serious violation of international law and directly undermine sovereignty as well as the territorial integrity of Lebanon. We condemn the attack on the nuclear ships in southern Lebanon, which have caused death and injuries, as well as damage to youthful assets. These are not attacks on a mission, but on the very principles of peace and the UN itself. Those responsible for the attack must be held accountable. It's challenging time, however, we see a move for diplomacy. Military is by paving the way for negotiations between the United States and the Islamic Republic of Iran. This pause creates space for dialogue and mediation toward a more lasting solution. We also take note of a proposal that could serve as a seat of engagement. It must now be translated into a cohesive peace agreement. Malaysia therefore urges all parties to fully respect and implement the desire in good faith and abide by international law. Any provocative action now risks raveling the progress with consequences not only for the region but for global economic and energy stability. We commend all joint and mediation efforts, including the constructive initiative by Pakistan. We support all efforts to advance peace and stability in the region. We also call for immediate humanitarian access to all affected civilian populations. Malaysia affirms the importance of freedom of navigation and security of critical maritime routes in accordance with international law. Madam President, this situation once again exposes a problem reality. The Security Council is not functioning as it should. It's surprising whether Gaza, Lebanon, or the Middle East, the Council has too often been able to act decisively when it is most needed. The debate on the Assembly Resolution 262 or the initiative provides an important platform for member states to deliberate on matters affecting international peace and security and uphold principles of transparency and accountability. Malaysia therefore reiterates its long-standing call for reform of the veto with a view to its eventual abolition. A reformed, expanded, and more representative Security Council would be equipped to discharge its responsibilities under the Charter effectively and credibly. To conclude the motion, Malaysia urges all parties to return to most basic principles that bind us to the global community: respect for international law, the UN Charter, international humanitarian law, and protection of civilians above all. Thank you.
I thank the representative for Malaysia. I now give the floor to the representative of Indonesia.
Madam President, Indonesia will align with the statement made by Philippines on behalf of ASEAN. Today, once again, Security Council stability insisted. Once again, Council is falling short of its need to maintain national peace and security. Specifically, this time, it is about safeguarding strategic maritime corridors that underpin global supply chains and addressing the humanitarian consequences that follow. Madam President, the consequences of war are felt across the region and beyond. The impact is immediate and severe. Therefore, we encourage and support the Secretary General to establish a mechanism as an interim measure to ensure the flow of traffic for critical commodities such as fertilizer, oil and gas, to mitigate food and energy insecurity in many countries. Madam President, with goods, oil and gas, people also pass through waters. Seafarers of all nations now face growing risks, with about 20,000 are stranded at sea. We call for all parties to ensure the safety of seafarers and ships in accordance with the International Convention for the Safety of Life at Sea, the relevant standard recommended practices by the International Maritime Organization. The sea is a global common good. It is in our collective interest to safeguard it, including its regime of transit passage. Indonesia therefore calls on all states to exercise maximum restraint, prevent further escalation, and act in full conformity with international law, including in particular the 1982 UN Convention on Law of Sea. We firmly believe sustained engagement and credible negotiation remain the only viable path for ending this war. Going forward, Indonesia underscores the urgency of liberal states and key countries to develop confidence-building measures that can ensure the continued security and stability of maritime routes in trade of Hormuz. Madam President, our meeting today must not become just another procedural exercise. It must ask the Security Council to act decisively, to deliver tangible progress on the ground, and to undertake long overdue reform so that it can effectively fulfill its mandate. Only through action can we restore stability and protect humanity for the region and beyond. Thank you.
I thank the Distinguished Representative for Indonesia. I now give the floor to the Distinguished Representative of the Republic of Korea, followed by Thailand and Sierra Leone.
Thank you, Madam President. Trade, of course, is one of the most vital maritime corridors in the world, through which a significant portion of global energy supplies transit daily. It is also a vital channel for exports of fertilizer from the Middle East, as about 1/3 of the world's fertilizer trade normally passes through this trade. Therefore, any disruptions to its safety and security carry profound implications, not only for the region, but also for the stability of our international economy and society, as we witnessed recently. Against terrorist, I regret that members of the Sudan failed to breach their references on this issue, despite the urgency and importance of the situation. Republic of Korea calls on the Council to take appropriate action, ensure transparency and freedom of navigation in the street, to continue their efforts to take collective measures to hold the Council's primary responsibility to peace and security by close and constructive consultations. My delegation also hopes that failure to adopt the resolution will not send a wrong message that threatens communication rights, freedom can be justified or used as a weapon in any warfare. Madam President, I would like to treat important of the following report. First, freedom of navigation is a fundamental principle of international law. Reflected in the United Nations Convention on the Sea, must be respected at all times. The principle is sacrosanct for ensuring the uninterrupted flow of global trade and energy. Express concern threats attacks vessels and underscores no country should be able to decide which ships or cargoes may pass through trade or impose charges. We would like to affirm that this the Strait of Hormuz as an international waterway, where all ships and aircraft enjoy the right of transitation. In this regard, my government is ready to join in an effort with all partner countries to safeguard the principle of freedom of navigation. Second, I daily should like to underscore that only dialogue, diplomacy, and good faith engagement can lead a sustainable and peaceful solution. The ongoing talks on parties should continue until an agreement is finally reached. At the same time, any durable ceasefire must be fully respected. In this condition, we commend the continued efforts of the mediators, particularly Pakistan, as the host of these talks, for their constructive role in facilitating dialogue and de-escalation. We also highly commend the Gulf countries for exercising restraint from engaging in conflict, despite Iran's direct tests. In the same spirit, my delegation highly appreciates Thailand's effort of Secretary General, including engagement of his President Yang Mahmoud, who works closely with the stakeholders in the Middle East. Third, we emphasize the importance of transnational international cooperation to safeguard maritime security. This includes enhanced information sharing, comfortability measures, and coordinated plans for the safety at sea. Madam President, the stability of the Strait of Hormuz is not just a regional matter. It is a global imperative that requires our collective responsibility. My government remains firmly committed to working with all member states to promote its stability and security of international sea lanes from of navigation. I thank you.
I thank the Distinguished Representative of the Republic of Korea. I now give the floor to the Distinguished Representative of Ireland.
I thank Madam President for convening this meeting of such an urgent and very important. I lines up with the assessment delivered by the Philippines, and I will make full set in our national party. Madam President, we share the profound concern of the international community over the situation in the Middle East. Prolonged, outfitting suffering on inability on ground carries serious and harmful repercussions, not only for regional stability, but also for global security, energy markets, and the world economy. Disruptions in trade ports directly threaten critical for supply chains and disproportionately affect energy importing countries, including Coast Island. One of the to the conflict island is directly affected by its process. I find much vessel was trapped in trade ports with 23 crew members badly affected, while our vessels were stranded. We therefore call on all parties to respect of navigation and right safe passage in accordance with international law, including in particular the 1982 UNCLOS. The safety and security of civilians and seafarers must be a net priority. We also restore obligation for parties to tax civilians and civilian infrastructure in full compliance with international humanitarian law. Madam President, Thailand welcomes treaty with 5 between the United States and the Republic of Iran. We commend the mediation efforts of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan and all parties involved. It is a critical step, yet it remains a serious job. Without full and effective implementation of ceasefire and sustained dialogue good faith, peace will remain elusive, and civilian freedom will, of course, persist. In closing, Thailand calls on all parties to respect principles of international law, including the Charter of the United Nations, society of reference, immediately de-escalate tensions, and prevent dialogue, policy, and creation towards comprehensive and lasting resolution. I thank you for your attention.
I thank the Distinguished Representative of Thailand. I now give the floor to the Distinguished Representative of Sierra Leone, followed by South Africa and Pakistan.
Madam President, thank you for convening the debate on the use of the video in accordance with General Assembly Resolution 76/262. Until February, our war was confronted with yet another instance of use of force not in conformity with the Charter of the United Nations and international law. The subsequent developments have not undermined the Charter's prohibitions of force, and the parameters going to exercise the inherent right of defense,
but I've always said sometimes regarding compliance with international humanitarian law in the conduct of states. In response to this development, Security Council has considered the ongoing hostilities in the Middle East and led to the adoption of Resolution 2817, which the co-sponsored. Subsequently, 7 April 2026, the Council also considered the resolution on the item the situation in the Middle East, was Bahrain and the Gulf Cooperation Council. 11 Council members voted in favor of the permanent members' negative vote and 2 members abstained. As a result, the resolution was adopted, and we will take note of explanations of vote delivered those states that have non-concurring vote. While the text was adopted, particularly given the aim of attacks and threats against militant culture vessels in Arabia of Mosque, we nevertheless hope the current ceasefire will be steadied and the root causes of the conflicts will be addressed in order to secure lasting peace and stability in the region. The applicant designed for a continued liaison effort, and we also commend the efforts of University General and relevant agencies. Madam President, the debate of Westminster State with an important opportunity to reflect the impact of the veto on functioning, credibility, and effectiveness of the Council is shining its mandate. It also compels us to consider the real consequences of Council crisis on the lives and livelihoods of people affected by the conflict directly and indirectly. For African in particular, the economic impact of current conflicts are already considered. Conflict has triggered the shock and rapidly evolving into a cost of living crisis, driven by higher fuel and food prices, rising shipping shorts, exchange rate pressures, and tight fuel conditions. Fertilizer shortage may prove even more consequential than the oil, as the substitute required natural gas supplies has affected ammonia and production during a critical planting season in many parts of Africa. For Sierra Leone, the conflict ceased, risk insurance premiums will rise rapidly, vessels were new to divert via Cape Good Hope, and the cost of essential imports, including food, pharmaceutical, construction materials, and industrial input, including significantly. If this continues beyond June 26, gold predictions that gold actually flow sharply, inflation could rise again, physical could deepen, and more of our people could push to escape poverty. In light of foregoing, Sierra Leone calls on the involved parties to assist maximum restraint and obtain dialogue and the peaceful settlement issue in accordance with Article 3 of the Charter of the United Nations. We have scored monumental importance respect for sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity for all states, as well as 6 areas to prohibition of the use of force enshrined in the Charter of the United Nations. Finally, Madam President, no doubt the Security Council must be reformed to reflect present-day geopolitical realities. The question of the veto remains one of the 5 clauses under discussions in terms of negotiations. It has now opened as best state to reach agreement to address the structural injustice and the responsible use of veto for greater outcomes with greater responsibility. Thank you.
Thank the representative of Sierra Leone. I have the floor to the representative of Sussex.
Madam President, we meet today in accordance with the atomic requirement of the General Assembly Resolution 7662 to convene and veto its use in the Security Council. South Africa appreciates the opportunity for the General Assembly to consider this unprovoked and destructive conflict in the Middle East, where war is severely impeding the development agendas of 30 states. We recall that on 28 February, the current conflict began with a breach of Article 2.4 of the UN Charter. Considering the conflict's incalculable threat to international peace and security and its impact on the global economy, the use of the veto prevented an even further escalation of conflict. The Council solicited all states to become involved, resulting in further devastating political, economic, and social consequences for the entire world. Madam President, South Africa welcomes current initiatives, as well as the ongoing efforts that shift aimed at achieving a comprehensive end to the conflict in the Middle East and advancing a just, sustainable, and lasting peace. A immediate cessation of all attacks and threats of fatigue, as well as strict compliance with suffrage and against its imperative to prevent the future recurrence of such aggressions. The respect for the sovereignty, and territorial integrity of the affected countries in the region must be respected by all parties concerned. In accordance with international human rights and international humanitarian law, civilian populations and civilian infrastructure must never be tried to protect by any party under any circumstances. South Africa urges all parties to end urgently any good faith dialogue and use negotiations, and reaffirms its support for credible, impartial mediation efforts in bringing an end to the conflict and securing a durable peace for all the countries in the region. South Africa is equally alarmed by Israel's illegal, indiscriminate military operations in Lebanon, which have resulted in civilian casualties, the destruction of essential infrastructure, the displacement of communities, and the death of UN peacekeepers. These attacks constitute a serious breach of Lebanon's sovereignty and territorial integrity, and further destabilizes the region, compounding an already volatile and fragile situation. The killing of peacekeepers deployed by our organization by fellow member states can never be condoned. South Africa is quite concerned by the response by Iran against several Gulf countries, which can also concern a violation of the UN Charter. While Iran has a legal and moral right to defend itself against those states that engaged in armed attacks against it, its actions against the Gulf cooperation states should be in accordance with Article 51 of the UN Charter and not violate the sovereignty of the affected states. These attacks against the GCC states heighten the risk of a broader regional conflagration. By the adoption of UN Security Council Resolution 2817, which strongly condemns military attacks on civilians and infrastructure in these countries, and on, we are disappointed that at the time the was unable to call for and guarantee any desire and the commencement of diplomatic efforts towards a peaceful negotiated settlement. It is the core duty and responsibility of the UN Security Council to ensure peace and pacific settlement of disputes, and not to contextualize and escalate crises. South Africa believes that the international community has a shared responsibility to uphold the principle of freedom of navigation and to ensure the safe passage of vessels. We urge all parties to work towards a peaceful resolution of the conflict and to respect international law. In this respect, we urge all parties to exercise maximum strength and to ensure that any action taken are fully consistent with international law. Related reference to systemic risks, countries like South Africa that depend on stable international legal regimes and frameworks, including the International Maritime Organization and the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea. The increasing normalization of coercive maritime practices outside bilateral structures could erode global norms that safeguard freedom of navigation. Madam President, the Security Council must take lessons from the ill-conceived use force in Libya, not respecting the letter and spirit of Resolution 1973. The broad nature of the present failed, that would be even more unclear on the instability of the use of force that opened the door for possible abuse or misinterpretation. Madam President, South Africa remains steadfast in belief that there is no military solution to this crisis. All parties must prioritize de-escalation, avoid further confrontation, and pursue diplomatic negotiations in good faith, preferably through established multilateral mechanisms and the auspices of the United Nations. Despite the commendable attempts by Pakistan to book peace, the trap deferred as a result of Iran being attacked twice in the midst of negotiations seems insurmountable without efficient guarantees. South Africa echoes the call of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights for all states to uphold international human rights and humanitarian law, and to act in a manner consistent with the principles of our shared humanity. We believe that the threat of forms the vital international shipping routes for goods and energy should not be blocked by this conflict. South Africa calls for the restoration of normal passage through the trade situation adversely impacted countries around the world. Madam President, the choice for appears to have become a default, despite our colleagues undertaking consistent with the obligations the UN Charter not to use war as means to resolve our differences. We should not ignore rising threats of further aggression against another member state, the allied state of Cuba. Illegal acts of aggression against Cuba can only compound or devastating effects of the decades of old blockade. In conclusion, South Africa reiterates the importance of making real and meaningful progress to achieve other contributing to further divisiveness. We reaffirm our position that parties to the current conflict should be able to identify areas of common interest in a spirit of compromise and flexibility, rather than continue to go down a path of destruction. There can be no victor in this war or choice, as cost to the parties, the region, and the international community have already been far too great. I thank you.
I thank this representative for South Africa. I now give the floor to the senior representative of Pakistan, followed by Tunisia and Morocco.
Madam President, Pakistan's clear and unequivocal position on the situation in the Middle East has been expressed in Security Council and elsewhere. Pakistan remains deeply concerned with the developments over the past week in the region. This conflict, whose consequences have impacted everyone in the region and beyond, should never have happened. From the outset, Pakistan prioritized de-escalation, cessation of hostilities, and return to dialogue for a peaceful diplomatic solution to this crisis. Pakistan successfully hosted the Islamabad talks on 11th and 12th of April. These talks were made possible by Pakistan's engagement with parties, as well as outreach efforts aimed at promoting Egypt's end of hostilities and achieving peace and stability in the region. Through the Islamabad process, Pakistan is pursuing the objective of ending the war and ensuring long-term peace. Pakistan supports the sovereignty, territorial integrity, political independence, and security of all brotherly countries in the region. It has also expressed continued and unwavering support to complete solidarity with the GCC countries in these challenging times. And President, the Strait of Hormuz is an important international shipping route for goods and energy. Pakistan calls for the security of ships and crew members, the swift and safe passage of civil ships, and restoration of normal passage through the strait. The situation in the Strait of Hormuz is adversely impacting countries around the world, including Pakistan. The consequences for regional and global economy are evidently harsh. And Pakistanis are also suffering. The impact is felt not only in terms of energy flows, but also fertilizers and other essential commodities, thus affecting food security, cost of living, and squeezing the livelihood of the most vulnerable. IMF, for example, have warned of serious risks, raising alarm about the rise in debt as countries around the world respond to the energy crisis. And this was a headline on the front page of today's New York Times. Interestingly, another headline on the same page referred to the stock market scaling a new peak, reflecting optimism that peace was near. This is just one perspective outside these walls, as the international community follows this crisis. Adopting the report here, if military escalation and disruptions persist, the suffering prolong and extend far beyond the region, translating into widespread economic hardship. Return to peace, on the other hand, will end it all. And we agree on the urgency of the situation and fundamental objective of reopening of the Strait of Hormuz and normalization of the situation at the earliest. This is an important issue not only for the GCC countries but also for all states in the region and beyond, including Pakistan. It is also logical that any discussion or arrangement related to the Strait of Hormuz will have to take into account the legitimate interests of the GCC countries in accordance with international law. We are grateful and humbled that Pakistan has recognized for its constructive diplomatic engagement in supporting de-escalation, its efforts, and the broad pursuit of stability between the United States and Iran. Through sustained interaction, including at the leadership level with both Washington and Tehran, as well as with other partners in the region and beyond, notably Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Turkey, and China, and others, Islamabad has sought to encourage dialogue, facilitate the exchange of messages, and help create conditions and space conducive to meaningful negotiations. This approach underscores Pakistan's consistent commitment to regional stability
and international peace, reflecting our preference for principled, dialogue-oriented diplomacy in addressing complex geopolitical challenges and managing complex issues. Madam President, Pakistan remains committed to continue playing its constructive role in promoting dialogue, fostering understanding, supporting all efforts aimed at achieving lasting peace in the region. I thank you.
I thank the senior representative of Pakistan. I now give the floor to the senior representative of Tunisia, followed by Morocco, as the last speaker before our bracket one.
Tunisia reaffirms total solidarity with our brothers in Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Kingdom of Bahrain, the State of Kuwait, the State of Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, Sultanate of Oman, the Kingdom of Jordan, and the Republic of Iraq, while confronting all rights to security, stability, sovereignty, and prosperity. Our business constant process of effort with Tunisia stresses its commitment respecting all states' sovereignty, UN Charter, and the rule of law, and the rights peaceful means the settlement of disputes. The current tragic situation, threatening today the stability and peace of the entire world, is a direct consequence of the international community's failure to restore the imprescriptible rights of Palestinian people on all the land, as it is a direct consequence of an unprecedented, moral, ethical, and human worldwide scandal, predatory abuse, and personal agenda not sufficiently denounced and clearly condemned. Thank you.
I thank the senior representative of Tunisia, and I give the floor to the senior representative of Morocco.
Madam President, there are times where history calls on nations to rise up and defend their legion. Today, Kingdom of Morocco defends the values that the founding fathers of our organization enshrined in Charter, national sovereignty of states, territorial integrity, and black security. These values are today being tested. The security of our brotherly Arab countries have violated the capacity of the multilateral system to respond with a distinct voice to the challenges in front of us, also being tested. It is in this context that the Kingdom of Morocco would like to reaffirm its critical concerns. First of all, the Kingdom of Morocco condemns in the strongest possible terms the Iranian aggression using missiles, which violated the integrity and security of the brotherly countries Saudi Arabia, UAE, the Kingdom of Bahrain, Qatar, the State of Kuwait, and the Kingdom of Jordan, and Sultanate of Oman. We consider this to be a flagrant violation of national security of the states and a missile attack on their security and direct threat to the stability and security not just of the region, but of the world as a whole. Secondly, Morocco welcomes the announcement of a ceasefire to the United States Islamic Republic of Iran. We support the position provided and much appreciated provided by Pakistan to the negotiators. Thirdly, the Strait of Hormuz is a strategic artery and central role for global economy and the stability of international trade is really college. We assure the importance of making sure that the Strait safeguards its role it is playing for prosperity and stability of all nations. At present, some things are confirmed over time. During the summit in Morocco in 2016, His Majesty Mahmoud VI Protector reaffirmed that Morocco is considered the security and the stability of the Gulf Arab state is inextricably linked to the stability of Kingdom of Morocco. What impacts you also affects us, and what impacts us also impacts you, and the code. And following this royal vision, we reaffirm our full solidarity with the Arab states in the Gulf and full support all the legitimate measures will be necessary to preserve the security, ensure safety of the nationals and residents on their soil. To conclude, Madam President, I would like to say that peace in the region of the Gulf is a peace for the world entire. Peace, which is the most precious heritage that will be bequeathed to future generations. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Morocco. We have the speaker in this debate for this meeting. We will hear rank speakers this afternoon at 3 p.m. in the hall. Meeting is adjourned.